You all except for Dawn, if you could mute yourself. For some reason, somebody's got an echo feedback on their system. Before I introduce Dawn, Mark, give us a wave there. A big thank you to Mark Hart, who is our technical supervisor, guru, and genius. He collects, puts all the sessions, all the notes, collects them, collates them, and puts them and publishes them on the OC Callers website, available to everybody at any time. And he's basically the one that keeps us all straight and on the straight and narrow and records everything up to the cloud and loads it. Today's session is a session that is been asked for a number of times, and a follow-on from some of the sessions that Don Beck and Dan Like do on their own session, which is about 6 hours before my session is on Sundays. So at a more sensible hour for him, but absolutely abhorrent for us in Australia. And that's about analyzing not only a call, but a sequence and choreography in general to look at the difficulty, figure out where the problems are and what to be aware of and how to fix it. There is absolutely no place to start when you introduce somebody like Don Beck, especially another caller, because he's one of those few that, like a few others that I consider, have the legend status in the business. You can pretty much go far back as the beginning of Caller Lab and the development of the precursors to our current programs. You're going to find Don Beck's name mixed in with almost every aspect of calling and teaching. Everybody should be aware of Don Beck. If you've ever called movements like a Ferris wheel or chain down the line, or if you call plus ping pong circulate, he's the one that invented those, and those are our standards. Don is the acclaimed expert on mental image calling. He's an active caller, teacher, mentor, coach, former accredited caller coach, which I think he only let lapse because he had no extra time to sit the test because he's too busy teaching and coaching the teachers and coaches how to teach and coach. He's still very active in the industry. I think you're still calling locally, Don, and traveling nationally, internationally for seminars, book schools, running his own Zoom session every week here on the sessions. And the spectrum of knowledge is just incredible. So rather than take up more time about Don, please welcome Don Beck to carry on with a much discussed topic about discussing sequence difficulty, movement difficulty, and how to fix those problems.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you, everyone. When I was listening to that introduction, I was wondering who you were talking about. That sounded impressive.
It is impressive, and so are you, so shut up and get on with it.
Let's see, I gotta stick things on my screen so I'm reminded of stuff. I see a lot of familiar faces here, which is great, but what's even better is I see some faces that aren't familiar, and I might be able to get to know some new people. Also, Mel, I'm currently not calling very much at all, haven't for a number of years, but because of Zoom, I'm getting my ability to think about choreography and square dancing in general again, and I'm really enjoying it. The topic is choreographic difficulty. I think we are all aware that some choreography, some calling is more difficult, some more easy than others. You can tell some dancers can dance this stuff, some can't. And there have been a lot of good talks that I've heard over the years about what makes things easy or makes things hard. And probably some of these sessions that Mel has run already have talked about them. What is difficult, and by difficult, I mean something that the dancers out there can dance or have troubles dancing, can dance smoothly or stumble on. And it doesn't matter whether this is a mainstream or a plus or an advanced, what have you, as long as they know the calls, it's the way they're delivered. And a quick list that comes to my mind of what's easy and what's hard. I mean, what makes things easy or hard are whether the formation is a common formation or not, whether the sex arrangement is standard or not, like one couple half sashayed and the other not, or two men, two women. Whether the acoustics in the hall are good or not. If you can't hear it, you can't do it. whether dancer experience, if dancers haven't had enough experience with a particular level of calling, the material is more difficult for them. How tired the dancers are, whether the floor is slippery or not, whether it's left-handed or right-handed. Bad body flow will make things more difficult than good body flow. Bad timing will do the same thing. If a caller doesn't enunciate properly, that makes it more difficult. Whether the dancers are familiar with the calls. Did a mainstream dancer come into a plus hall? He's going to have troubles because it's difficult if you can't dance the calls that you don't know. Tempo of the music, how much thinking time do they have? Whether it's a full moon or not, that I really don't believe in that, but a lot of people seem to think it has something to do with it. Those are some of the basic factors, and some of these the dancer can't control. How much experience the dancers have, excuse me, the caller can't control. How much experience the dancers have, whether the floor is slippery, what's the phase of the moon. But some of them the caller does have control over, and that is formation awareness, easy formations, handedness, and all the other things. And it turns out, and I think it's pretty obvious, like many things in our lives these days, it's not black and white. It's not either easy or hard. There's a spectrum. Things are very easy, they're very hard. And a good caller will be able to control the degree of difficulty, and hopefully the average floor you're working with will want a certain degree of difficulty, and the good caller will be able to raise and lower that difficulty so it's just up to the level that the dancers can dance. They want to feel challenged, but they want to win. So you don't want it to be really boring stuff, but you don't want to break them down all the time. So controlling that, let me get this out of the way. Controlling that degree of difficulty, if you're aware of it, comes with lots and lots of experience. But it's not that easy to do, and it does take a lot of experience. So what I found, and again, we've heard a lot of talks about, oh, this makes it difficulty, and the brain thinks this way and thinks that way, and some callers use a left brain and right brain, or the dancers. And what I found over the years with doing this talk and experiments with various caller groups is that you guys, whether you've been calling for 40 or 60 years, or whether you've been calling for 1 or 2 years, but dancing at least a little bit before that, have some ability to tell whether things are hard or easy. You may not be able to control it yet, but at least you have an inert sense of what is easy and what is hard. And what we're going to do today is go through just that kind of a thing. I've set up a number of sequences, and I'm going to have Taminations run through them. Taminations understands the calls. Sometimes they look a little bit more difficult or not good than they should be because Taminations doesn't always flow smoothly from one to another. They adjust to the finishing one call before the next, and the formations get a little messy. But I think you'll be able to figure out what's going on, and that's what we did on our Saturday session that Mel wanted me to semi-duplicate here, except we're doing different sequences. I'm going to run a bunch of these sequences through one at a time for you guys with the help of Taminations. And then you're going to decide, are these easy or hard? On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is you've just taught the call to a class, and this is the kind of formations you're going to teach or call so that they can practice what they've just learned. And on 5, you've got some really sharp challenge dancers that you want to keep entertained at your mainstream dance. They're going to be using all mainstream calls. mainstream or basic. And so 1 would be really basic, 5 would be pretty challenging for the average floor, and 3 would be what you would use at a typical average dance, at least where you would start off when you went to visit some other club and call for them. And what we're going to have you do is, when I go through a sequence, I'm trying to figure out, I've got a few ways that I think I want to go through them. When I go through a sequence, you're going to go to the chat and do a personal chat to Mel. And Mel's going to tally the numbers and tell us what the average, probably, what the average agreement is. Is this a 2? Is this a 5? And maybe the high, the high point and the low point, and what have you. And then we can take a few minutes to discuss why it was a 2 or why it was a 4. Answer some questions on that, and then move on to the next sequence. And if it doesn't go smoothly in that direction, we'll readjust, just like any good caller does. But with that, Mel, I'm going to share my screen when you say it's okay. Mel, I can't share my screen right now. Or is it Mark that has to do that for me? There we go. Now let's see. Where's Taminations? I thought I had them open. Hold on.
And Don, could you review once more which is easiest and which is hardest?
Yes. Just let me find Taminations first. Whoops, that's a total mess here. Oh, there it's Taminations. Okay, now let me try to stop sharing. Who knows what I was sharing? Share screen. Taminations. Ooh, it's open more than once. That's not good. Oh, I guess sorry about that. Let's see. How did I get that many versions of Taminations open? And I thought I had this all prepared so I wouldn't seem silly like this. We still have 4 of them.
It's a special talent.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law.
Well, there's a name for it in the field. It's called several, I can't remember, I've been out of the field of programming for so long. Do we all see Taminations?
Yeah, sharing Taminations will be a 4.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. I think you're right. I was not sure whether to, when I look at things, I just highlight the active dancer, but I thought maybe for this, highlighting a head couple and a side couple would be okay. What I've found in the past, some people are colorblind, and I'm just wondering if this color combination is something that may be a problem for anybody.
We're not seeing Taminations.
Now you tell me.
You need to share the screen again.
I hear
and
you.
somebody is not muted.
Mark, you gotta mute somebody there.
Share screen. Is that better?
Caller, turn down your radio.
Was hearing myself talk a few times there. Can everybody see Taminations now? Speak up if you cannot, I guess is the thing.
I think audio and video now seems to be working.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So as I was trying to say when I wasn't sharing it, Let me go into gallery view so I can see a few more of you. It's nice to get feedback of what you guys are thinking here. Let's see, what was I trying to say? Oh,
Now, Don,
so
before you start, Betsy asked if you could once more review what 1 means, what 5 means,
yeah,
and what 3 means.
I will. First, I want to just make sure, do we have anybody that's colorblind and can't distinguish the colors here? Because I've had that happen before, and I'd rather know about it beforehand because I can change colors easily.
I can't see the number 4 couple.
The number 4, okay, Chris. You're lucky you can see any of them. I'm sorry, that's an in-joke. Let's see if I can put, they're yellow right now. Is that any better, Chris?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
They're not that different from the number 1, but it's close enough. So in answer to Betsy's question, let me review. Number 1 would be a call that was difficulty. Number 1 would be one that is very, very basic, very easy, one that you would call for your class after you've taught them a call and they're not that comfortable with the other calls yet. Number 2 would be after they've done it for a while. Number 3 is what you would call it a typical dance. Number 4 is what you would call it a dance that people have been dancing a long time and are pretty regular dancers, or that you might be doing in a workshop tip. And number 5 is if you had it go to your head and you wanted to show them that you were boss and make them work too hard. It's different than I said it before. Does that clarify it, Betsy? Good. not hearing from you makes it fine. All right, let's go to number 1 here. So I have to go to a different screen so I can, oh, that's interesting. I guess I'm gonna have to make this smaller. And see fewer of your faces. Mel, I won't be able to see people's hands raised or anything like that. So we'll let you take care of that.
Yeah.
If somebody does. So let me start with the first.
So before you start, Don, the basic premise is Don is going to put the sequence up, have a look at it, how it plays out through terminations. Then everybody will send me a message to say where you think it is 1 through 5. I'll collate it, and then we'll discuss the sequence after before we move to the next. Is that correct?
That's good with me.
Okay.
So I'm putting a sequence up here now. Head square through 4, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers right and left through, centers square through 3, Alaman left. I am going to have these dancers dance it quickly just so you get a feel for the flow. Alaman left and promenade home. When we talk about it, we're going to slow it down to more of a normal speed. But so mark your cards 1 through 5 or 3.7 if that's what it takes. Although I found calibrating this 1 through 10 is kind of a pain. Mel, you'll let me know when things are there and we'll go from there.
Can we have people send their numbers only to Mel so that we don't see everyone's numbers?
Yes, that's what I wanted. I hoped I made that clear. Do a personal note to Mel so you don't influence other people's thoughts. And you got a project, Mel, coordinating these. I think when we did it before, Dan had a little program set up so it would come up with a mean for immediately when he typed them in. And I don't need an exact average. I just, a visual feeling for what it is.
For future reference, there is a way of doing polls, I think, in Zoom as well that might help.
Ooh, that's an interesting thing I'll have to look at. Oh, but that would be for Mel to do, not for me. Yes, for future reference.
It doesn't matter who does it. The computer will calculate the totals on its own.
Well, the reason I wanted Mel to do it is I'd be running I'm running terminations and he could be looking at the Zoom thing. Anywhere near, you got enough votes to tell us what's going on, Mel? You're nicely muted, but I don't see you talking anyway, so that's cool. Chris, what do you call this, dead time?
Sorry about that. My mute button was underneath. Okay, so I've stopped this poll now, and we have 21 easy sequence, 6 number 2 relatively easy sequence, little bit of interest, and 1 -5. This is way too simple.
I put this as a 1 for what that's worth, and so far we're all pretty much in agreement. I'm again trying to prove my point that even if you don't have a handle on this, you have a good feel whether it's easy or not. Let's go on to the next sequence. I think what we will do is go back and, if you want, look at some of these sequences afterwards, not really analyze at this point what's hard and what's easy, but just get a consensus. This one, I'll just read off quickly, or you can. Heads lead right, touch a quarter, left swing through, centers scoot back, cast off 3/4, centers cross run, split circulate, swing through, recycle and sweep a quarter. Oh, that's interesting. I have recycle and sweep a quarter. I hope terminations doesn't get confused. Pass through, ends, cross fold, slide through, trade, and promenade home. Actually, let me go back and get those extra ands out of there. I thought I'd proofread all these when I wrote them yesterday. Let's go with that. Let's show that Terminations knows how to dance this. I'm going to put it on fast speed again, and here they go. And hopefully you'll see that most of these flow nicely, and that it's smooth flowing choreography. The timing is whatever Terminations wants to do with it. Let's take one more look at it. Lead left, touch a quarter, left swing through, centers scoot back, cast 3/4, centers cross run, split circulate, swing through, etc. Let's have your votes, guys.
Voting is now open. Jesus Christ, guys, slow down. 8, 4, 5.
By the way, these are in no particular order. It's whatever order I felt working on them in. But I tried to mix them up a bit. Except for the first one. I tried to make that easy so we can all get on the same footing. By the way, everybody should vote. You're not being scored on this. Mel, you're not keeping score, I hope.
Absolutely.
Don, do you think that you could show them at regular speed? Because I just don't know what's happening at that speed. I have no idea. I can't vote this time because I have no idea what's going on.
Yes, I can, especially when we go back and analyze them, but let me run that one that we just did through normal speed. I just wanted the fast one just so you could see that everything seemed to flow nicely. Was that better, Helen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Slightly. Yeah.
Slightly, thanks.
As I said, I wasn't sure how to present them. Maybe we'll do them at slower speed. That seems to be fast enough. Now, maybe we should give people a time limit so that at a certain time you can stop reading messages and typing them in.
Okay, I've got it. I was also looking at a couple of other little, oh, sorry, there's another 4 just came in. Okay, so there was, Richard, I need a clarification. You had a 1 there. Was that a rollover from the last one? Richard Williams?
Since he's disappeared, let's just, oh, Rich is there,
Yeah,
but he's muted.
you muted Richard.
Yes, that was a rollover.
Okay, so add another 1 to the one before. I'll take it off of this one. Okay. We had 1 comment at my club that would be a 1, but on the road it would be a 5. We had 14 4s and we had 9 3s.
Interesting. Okay. So 4 is the most, gets the most votes.
Yeah.
Interestingly, when I tried to figure it, I couldn't figure out whether it was a 4 or a 5. And so I put it at 4.5, but that wasn't one of your options. So
Yeah,
I think,
I'm also looking at another aspect on this.
yeah.
3s and 4s are predominantly non-English speaking countries, and 5s are predominantly English speaking countries.
That's a good, I'm glad you're looking at that.
I say English speaking, but I'm talking, I mean, we all do it in English, but I'm just talking geographic as opposed to North America and the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
3s and 4s are lower, but that's where most of them are putting, most of the European ones are putting this in as a 3.
Very interesting. Let's.
Oh, sorry, there was a 2 in there as well I missed.
Wow. All right, let's go on to the next one here.
2 2s. My God, I missed 2 2s.
A 2-2, huh? Okay, I'm just going to dance this at normal speed. I'll try to call the calls as they're happening so you can get a feel for it too. Watching the dancers, listening to the call. I think you're aware that up here is, you can either follow the yellow brick road, the yellow bouncing ball down here with the sequence, or you can see the call being called up here as it's happening. But let's take a look at this one. Heads past the ocean, extend, swing through, boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line, flutter wheel and sweep a quarter, square through 4 hands when you get there, line facing out, bend the line, slide through, pass to the center, square through 3/4, Alaman left your corner and promenade home.
1 second, please, before you vote. I'm still making comments here. Okay, I'm ready.
Make your comments. I'm just going to have these guys bounce through this again, but you're busy thinking. Mel, another correlation that would be interesting, but we don't really have the time or energy to do that, is to compare the average numbers. You say they're clustered by continent. It'd be interesting if they were clustered by number of years calling also.
Yeah, that would have to be a very determined, that would be something that would be a definite poll sent out to
Yeah.
everybody to take time, look at it and think about. But you're right, it would definitely be an interesting correlation. It'd
So-
also be an eye opener for Color Lab when they start looking at definitions lists and the arguments of, let's drop this because we never use it. But that's a different discussion.
Very.
So again, on the scoring, if I understood right, one means that this is a teaching tip. You think this is a teaching tip, and something in there is being introduced for the first time, or this is maybe this is their first practice with whatever that call or that kind of choreography is. But it's a part of a teaching tip, and like it's supposed to be easy.
Basically, 1 is really easy and 5 is really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say teaching, that would be, this is something that would be taught in dance at class level with relative ease.
And it's what's easy and hard relative to the choreography, not relative to the other conditions like timing and enunciation and acoustics and experience and all that other stuff.
That's good, because I was just checking on the calendar to see if it was a full moon today or not.
Just totaling it up now. So give me a second. Okay, so we have Control X. Another 3 added on there.
I'll bet you I know it kind of come out of it. So
Okay, so we've got 1 4, 11 3s, 10 2s, and 3 1s.
What did the dogs vote?
They're about to get a very, very strong vote. 1 second.
So again, I figured they were about a 3. It's what I would call it a typical dance. The majority of you guys voted 3.
Thank you for letting me know somebody's walking on the street.
Your alarm's working well. The majority.
I just got a message. The reason they had an 8 is somebody thought the scale was 1 to 10.
Oh.
So that would have probably been about a 4 on the last one rather than the 8.
Okay.
Sorry, Mel.
That's all right.
That's what happens when the instructor isn't very clear with his directions. Sorry about that. So the majority voted 3 as I did. I was sure that several people would vote 2 on that, and that came in a close second. Again, proving my point that we all have a reasonably good grasp of this. Let's go on to the next one.
1 second.
Following ahead. What was that?
1 second. Where did you place that sequence?
Where did I put it?
Yeah.
I said it was a 3.
Okay. Ready?
Here comes any feedback on whether the colors all should be the same or whether they should be different, or this is good enough, or trying not specifically to look at dancers, but just the overall flow of things.
I think the way you have it laid out with just your 2 key couples is just good for relative association, because we're not focused on resolution, we're focused on flow. So I think it's really good that way.
Okay, so here's the next one. Heads past the ocean, extend, swing through and boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line. Similar to last one, flutter wheel, reverse flutter, lines are facing, pass through, bend the line, slide through, pass to the center, center square through 3. And again, you would have been having the center square through 3 while the outsides were still partner trading. There wouldn't have been bad timing there. Run it through once quickly, or not. Here we go. Just take a general look at what's going on. What are your numbers? Start writing them down and start thinking of them so Mel can start evaluating. We don't have as much dead time. And for those of you who've already voted, I'm running through it very slowly just to keep from twiddling my thumbs here.
When you were calling it at this speed, what record did you use? Blue Danube?
Anytime you're ready, Mel.
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay, on that sequence we have 1 4, 16 threes, 10 twos, 6 ones with one comment about overflow, albeit a 1 sequence.
Interesting, for some reason or another, and I can't figure out why, I had it at 3.5. I don't see why it was any more difficult than the previous one. But once again, everybody seems to think, the majority of people seem to think it's 3, and I'm in full agreement. Some of you think it's 2 and we should figure out why, or maybe it's a geographic thing. Let's go on to the next one, and hopefully we'll get back a chance to get back to these and do some analyzing. So here's the next one. Normal speed, heads past the ocean. That was a boys fold and adjust step ahead, which Taminations does automatically to give you a place you can do a walk and dodge from. And I want to take a look at that again. Heads past the ocean. At this point, I did a boys fold, and it should be a Z formation in here, but Taminations, just like dancers, adjusted. So up in the notes, I put in the center step ahead, so we could do a walk and dodge. then touch a quarter, centers trade, boys run, slide through, pass through, trade by. Oh, trade by, pass through, sorry, to an Alaman left. Write your numbers. Put in your bid.
Second. I'm going a bit fast for me to type here. Okay. Okay, here we are. I had to find out where this started.
I think this is where he's got the 45 at a 33 speed.
Yeah. Just trying to kill time while Mel's working on this.
I'd be interested in whether people would actually call this, because I really don't like that fold business there.
I wasn't too happy about it, I guess, but why not?
Because it trains them to the idea that getting out of the correct formation and fudging into some other formation is a good idea.
Well, if you look at the words on the sequence, and you probably didn't, but it says heads, head boys fold and the centers step ahead. That's what I would have called. Caminations doesn't understand that, so I put the parentheses around and the centers step ahead.
Yeah, at C1, I would just say step and fold.
Play nice.
There's a good comment in there, Mel.
No, I was saying step and fold.
Oh,
That's a challenge call, isn't it?
well, that's what Brian said. At challenge, I would call this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've just come to his comment. It's in the chat as well. Sorry. All right. And that is everybody voted?
I have.
Gonna write that there so I know where one section stops now. I had to go back and figure out where Ian was.
I can put all these sequences in the chat just for laughs eventually, but
I've been typing them out so that you have them with the votes.
yep.
That's what's taking so long.
I should have hired a stenographer or a statistician.
Or you could have sent the sequences to Mel.
Well, I could have done that.
That's all right. I'm getting there.
You guys could have sent the votes there ahead of time too.
Is that a statistician or a statographer?
Yeah, right.
And we couldn't have sent the votes to Mel unless you sent us all the sequences in advance.
Oh, it worked in the last presidential election, didn't it? Ooh, too early?
Yes, Betsy. No comment, Mel.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hang on. 19, 29, 30, 31, 32. Yeah. I just noticed we've got 45 people in here, but we're averaging about 32 to 35 votes. We've got 1 5, 19 4s, 1 3.5, and 11 3s.
The fours have it in general, and that's what I called it too. Pretty good consensus so far. Again, it would be interesting to see the people that were a little bit high or a little bit low, if they were consistent on their high or low, what their personal judgment is. Let's go on to the
I
next
know
one.
on 2 of them, they do calling for quite technically advanced capability groups, and those scores have been consistently lower than the average.
I'm going to run through this one more time just to show some of the things that I think are hard. First of all, this ends, fold, and walk and dodge is not the easiest thing. It's not that bad. This is where things become a little bit more difficult, is where you touch a quarter. We're working with these people on the one side, and all of a sudden I say centers trade. They have to switch their orientation, their focus onto the other side of the square. Boys trade, not too bad, although we're ending in half sashayed situations. Slide through, they're not facing after it, so that adds a slight degree of difficulty. Then trade by and pass through just to get to an Alaman left, so I can show off that I can resolve. But I agree with the consensus of 4. Let's
You know what's interesting just about that sequence though, Don, is where you say touch a quarter, centers trade adds a dimension of difficulty because you're changing an axis. Where I was calling in Canada, where I learned in Europe, that was such a common usage of flow because you were taught when you next to somebody, you touch their hand, there was never any question about which way you were going to go. You could call touch a quarter, scoot back, touch a quarter, centers trade. That would be the easy part. The centers trade and then the boys trade would have been the hard part because it's taking you from one axis to changing to the other side and an orientation simultaneously, but it's disconnected. So it's just a matter of perspective.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this one here. Head star through, centers pass through, right and left through, dive through, centers right and left through eventually, centers square through 3, and let me speed up, Alaman left and promenade home. And cast your ballots.
On that previous sequence, I agreed with the score, but for like different reasons. I wonder how much of that is going on.
Well,
I have to mention I was private chatting with someone trying to get them to give their answers to Mel directly, and after I got done with the private chat, I'm stuck in that mode, and now they're giving their answers to me privately. So look down if you're chatting. Well, I just look down to see if you're sending your answers to Mel or who you're sending to. I don't really want to name names.
Yeah, so the entire reason why I gave the previous figure a 4 rating was just for the step and fold at the beginning of that figure.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it was pretty standard, and although you're correct, you're not doing a star through to facing couples. You still were, or sorry, a slide through to facing couples. That's still reasonable with a group that you're calling to. So I don't think that that's too difficult. However, the step and fold and expecting them to understand, to stay in their group of 4 in the center, or that kind of stuff, having to work them through that would be probably the most difficult part. And the other thing that I found difficult about that particular figure was that the difficult thing was right at the very beginning of the figure. If you're going to kill them, you're going to kill them right at the beginning. You're not giving them a chance to get into the figure.
Interesting, when I was writing figures yesterday, Clark, for this, Brian, for this, I said, geez, it's gotten long enough. I better resolve and write it down. And then I realized, you know what made this sequence difficult? It's too darn long. But I didn't use that. I broke it up somewhat. So yeah, breaking them down at the beginning of the figure, what have you. But I think you'll agree that it's slightly tougher than the 3s we've just had. Just the slide through and back to back is just a, you know, if you wanted to make it easier, you'd do a star through. Yeah, the step and fold in the middle, it's just pushing it a degree further, yet not making it super challenging. And you know, most groups you should be able to get that through, but it's still a little bit more difficult. And we all seem to be pretty agreement. How are we doing on this one, Mel?
Just finished it now. Okay, we have 1-4, which I thought was interesting. 3 3s, 12 2s, 13 1s, and 1 0.5 with the comment this would be a 1 to a new dancer being in the class.
Interesting, as they all have been. Why are you guys dancing now? I was thinking it was a 1. Usually I've been guessing high instead of low, but we had quite a few 2s on this one too, as well as some bigger things. Let's just take a quick look and see. And you know, and most of the newer callers will recognize this as a pretty much chicken plucker, as I recall. Pass through, right and left through. Maybe you think the dive through is difficult because it's awkward not called that much, but center just square through 3 to the corner. Not
That's
sure.
that's the only hiccup thing that I have on that is a right and left through followed by a square through, because the hands in the behind the back, but that's just a bit of awkward choreography at the best of times. Right and left through, square through, especially if you're in a center because of the tightness of it. But it's not a difficult sequence. It is a very common drill sequence. As you say, a chicken plucker type sequence.
Comment if I could.
Yeah.
On all the module presentations, that is not too dissimilar to what every caller used at some point. And to me, that just is a confirmation that it's very common. And think beginner classes. I haven't gone to a beginner class in 50 years that hasn't used that sequence. So I would expect people to be able to do it. That's why I gave it a 1.
That's why I gave it a 1 too, Bob. I agree. I have quite a few more sequences and basically no more time. I'm going to do one more sequence here, and then we can either do a few more or go back and discuss the ones we've done. Or
oh my God, hang on.
What are you doing now? Typing the sequence?
Yep.
Oh, geez. Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to run it through fast. Sorry, Helen. And then I'm going to run it through slow rather than regular speed, and just let you look at the flow quickly on the first part and then digest it on the going through slowly. But here goes the first part. Oh, I got to push not only fast, but do it. And now let's switch it to slow. And I guess I will read the calls for people like me that can't look at the dancers and the calls at the same time. So heads lead right eventually. Put centers in. Centers cross run. Everybody touch a quarter. All circulate once. Trade when you meet same sex, and face in or roll if you're at plus. These lines of 4 pass through, and the girls cross run. Cast off 3 quarters. And then the boys cross run. These lines pass through, tag this line, and face left. Do a Ferris wheel. Centers wheel around. Pass to the center. Center's partner trade. Do an Alaman left and promenade home. And if you haven't already, cast your votes.
And I still have that person sending his vote to me privately.
Bob, was that you saying that?
No, but
Mike Gormley said that.
he can send a note to Mel that I got this number.
I think this sequence's difficulty or success is extremely dependent on the timing and the delivery.
Oh, well,
Yep.
assuming everything's perfect, except for the degree of the choreography itself.
I don't know what perfect means.
The timing, the stuff you talked about, the timing is good.
Perfect is the way you think you called it as opposed to the way you did call it.
Oh, I understand. Perfect is like how I would call it.
Yeah. Yes. Stop kibitzing, Mel, and tally up the scores.
I'm still waiting for the rest to come in.
Oh, okay.
I had a nap between your session this morning, Don, and this one's.
Me too.
Kind of dozed off a little bit here, and you would not believe the weird square dance dreams I had.
That I didn't have. I was able to escape.
Jeff Seidel, was that a change in number or a backwards number? I got 2 votes from you. You're muted, Jeff. You're still muted.
Yeah, the last one is the one on the two
Okay.
together there. That what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, I had 2 votes come in from you. I think it might have been a delay on the last sequence as opposed to this one because one was at one end of the spectrum and one was at the other.
I'm not sure then.
Okay.
That's what you do when you're very opinionated.
Yeah.
You vote twice.
Okay, done, and I'll start totaling.
This is an easy talk to give. I just sit here and wait. It's actually uncomfortable. I wish I had better things to say without distracting you.
Okay, I had a few less votes on those than the other ones because I think of the complexity of the sequence, but the total is 5 number 5s, 14 number 4s, 4 number 3s, 1 3.5, and 1 2.
Interesting.
Interestingly enough, most of the low votes come from Australia. Most of the European votes are around the 3 mark and the 4 mark.
This will be helpful when I go to those places and call, right? So I don't know what to call. I put this at a 5. I personally was trying to get people disoriented as much as I could without doing poor dancing. And I used to do difficult sequences from an 8-chain through, touch a quarter, fan the top. Fan the top, move to plus, so that kills some of my orientation here. But let me go through this and let me talk about what I think are the tough spots, and then we'll go talk about other things here, I guess. I'm gonna slow it down. So anyway, this was the first one that the consensus was the highest number of things. There's a mathematical term for that, but I can't remember, was different than the one that I had chosen, which is makes me think I've lost it here. But from this 8-chain setup, we don't do a centers in very often, especially not after a lead to the right. And then having the centers cross run, there's the body flow problem of crashing into each other. Just added a little bit of something. We went to a touch a quarter that gave us a column, not a problem. Circulate, not a problem. Trade with same sex and roll or face in, not a problem. Pass through, not a problem. I think it's not that commonly done and more difficult if you have the ends run into the center rather than the centers running around the ends, and especially having the ends cross run to the far center is not that common a thing, and it could be a problem. The cast off 3/4 going in from inverted lines, some going one direct clockwise, some going counterclockwise, might throw a few people. Again, the cross run from the centers is just the shoulder passing problem. Pass through should be no problem. Tag the line and face left as I'm just trying to get us into standard couples to resolve. Ferris wheel shouldn't be a problem at this point. A lot of callers have been doing Ferris wheel centers reverse wheel, but since we're going from left-handed waves, it's a normal wheel around to keep the flow going. I personally think the dancers would rather work with the person they're facing than have to work with the ones behind them, but that's not a problem. And then pass to the center. At this point, the pass to the center, those going into the center are much more likely to do a slide through than a partner trade because their momentum is heading them towards the centers. And doing a star through would make it a little better. And you can do an Alaman left and promenade home. Any other comments on different parts of that one?
There were a few comments that came in. Steve, you were rating him right. That is how it does rate. How difficult it would be for the dancers to go. So you're fine with that. There was a couple of comments on a couple of those sequences about flow. Feel free to bring them in. With regard to that last sequence, the big comment was that got a higher number. It would have been a 4, but a higher number just because of the unusual opening of it. It was rated as a 5.
I guess another thing I'm curious about is having just gone through it and pointed out going through it slowly and pointing out the parts that I thought were difficult. Did that change anybody's mind? Did you miss some of the parts that I thought were difficult? Or am I missing some of the parts that you think are easy? I guess it's an interesting question for me.
I'd like to make a comment, Don.
Go ahead.
If I were to use a sequence like this, and I might, if I was on the road, this would be toward the end of the tip, the end of the pattern. I would be testing out all those difficult parts to make sure they could do them. Now, heads lead right and centers in. I cannot think of a dance that I haven't called that in 20 years. I mean, that's a common sequence for me. But I would make sure that the dancers felt good with that. And then, of course, the most common thing after heads lead right, centers in is a cast off 3, which they can handle. So I would work the dancers with that. Then I'd go to the next hard thing on the cross runs, and I would test the dancers on it. Jerry Story liked to call that. He especially liked it from waves, and he'd have the end of he would call it like this to the floor. Say you do a pass the ocean, boys cross run, girls slide apart, let them in. And then he'd say, girls, let them in. Then he would not say anything the third time he called it. So you build up their confidence in doing it. So I would progress through the difficult calls, working toward the end where I could call the whole sequence.
Bob, that's an excellent point. The sequence cold would be a lot harder than building the parts of it. Way back near the beginning of these Zoom sessions in the COVID class, Ted Lazat did a talk on how to build a call, starting easy, working to more and more difficult ways. And he picked one particular call and worked it. It was an excellent talk, and people should go back and look at it if you want to get some good clues, because he gave not only what to do next, but why to do it. The kind of thing that Bob just said, you can get people through a sequence like that if you get them comfortable with the building blocks, and then you can put them together. But I think a lot will agree. I hope you will agree with me that it was, if you just throw it cold, it's going to drop your average floor in one of many places.
But that's why this sort of a session is important, because we might be comfortable dancing that and not understand that other people don't think that same way. And we would need to know which parts we would want to kind of baby the dancers through earlier. Which segments did we want to feed to them so they would digest it and then be able to do the whole sequence.
One of the things,
that's where us callers who try have an advantage in knowing this is going to be difficult somewhere else and not at home.
I completely agree with Bob and everybody. When I was looking at this, I was evaluating all the sequences, not on how would some floor that dances to me all the time and that I've worked with a lot do it, but some average floor at some club I've been hired to where they see me once or twice a year, maybe, and so how would they do? And the only way I could imagine them really getting through this is that I would start towards the end of the first tip. I'd be feeling them out on basic cross runs, basic centers, and the very normal stuff. And by tip 2, I'd already start workshopping some of the little combinations, like the lead to the left or right and centers in and that kind of thing, and be building the whole. This would be the thing that would be the hard tip towards the end of the night, not at the very end, because you don't want to kill them right before they go home. But it'd be a thing you'd have to build up to by breaking it into little modules and working with them to get them accustomed to those combinations.
Well, let me go back to the very introduction to the talk then. Is what I was trying to say is one of the many factors of calling is keeping it so the dancers can dance. One of the many factors of that is the degree of difficulty, and one of the ones that you can control is how difficult the choreography itself is versus the conditions of the hall and the dancers and everything else. And that the difficulty is a spectrum. We broke it from 1 to 5, but you can think of it any way you want. Some sequences are very easy, some are typical, some are much, much harder, even when they flow well and dance well with very experienced dancers. You as a caller should be able to either now or eventually control where in that spectrum of easy to hard your calling is. And as a newer caller, and some experienced callers that are not experienced in all aspects of calling, who think it might be difficult to control that level of difficulty, at least I think we're trying to show here that at least you have enough knowledge because you've danced, if nothing else, to get a feel for what is hard and what's easy. And once you understand what is hard and what's easy, then you'll be able to have a better chance of controlling it along the spectrum. And you guys helped me prove that in general, we're all pretty close to what we're doing. Go ahead, Mel. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Do I have to tell you, you're running this meeting?
I got to unmute myself. Well done, Mel. Just like to point out, we are past the top of the hour. Dawn, I thank you very, very much. There's a few people that have been saying goodbyes. Please feel free to stick around. Don is going to stick around for a bit to discuss any of the issues he's presented, maybe look at a couple other sequences and answer questions you have. I put some point notes just from what Don was talking about through his presentation, also all of the sequences that he gave and the scoring on it for you to have a look at. I posted that in the chat. And Don has also mentioned the class videos. There was 2 presentations Ted Lizotte gave on the call, and also then one is on the actual call itself in setting it up, and the other one is on programming a specific call, which are the 2 that he put, and also the link to all the class sessions. Those are also in the chat. So save those and set them in your favorites to go back and watch. Dawn, I want to thank you personally very much for coming in to share this day with us and share your information. As I said, this is the 5th time we've looked at the aspects of difficulty in sequences, difficulty in movements. It's always a popular topic, and it's always a controversial topic because of the way everybody looks at things, not only in a geographic way, but how they actually teach their own classes within a region and how they call in a region. So it's really, really good that way to get the commonality of why we look at things the way we do. So from me to you, and hopefully from everybody here, thank you very much, and thank you for coming in. And please feel free to stay.
Thank you guys for participating. Thanks, Mel, for having me here. I just tried to take all of my sequences along with my votes on it and paste it in the chat, and it didn't work. So, but I will send that along with my introduction comments to, where was I going to send it? Oh, to Mark.
Right. You're going to send it to Mark, or you can send it to me and I can get it to Mark. Either one works. And
you guys can listen to my words in your own mind sometime. Hopefully what I was trying to prove to people made sense, and hopefully it was a slightly different way of looking at it than you have before. But I've always thought it was interesting to see how you guys think en masse, and maybe sometime, Mel, you should, I think you hinted that you've done this, is have everybody write a sequence and have them decide whether it's easy or hard, and then we'll look at it. You can lead them in deciding and running them through or something.
Yeah, we spent a session about 6 hours dealing primarily with peer review, how to actually review your sequences, what's good, what's bad, to be open and honest for caller discussion, to see why a sequence works, what you can do to fix it, what you can do to correct it. But to actually do the analysis at the level and give it a scoring rating, we have not done other than in your session. Betsy, if Betsy's still here, she is in there somewhere. She's been here dealing with difficulty in sequences or choreographic difficulty and what will make that and how to fix that. This is looking at, and it's been building up to look at a sequence as a single entity, and that just marries in beautifully with the comments. I think it was Chris that made it, that it was either Chris or Bob, I can't remember, but that may be a difficult sequence if you look at it in isolation. But if that was your programming for the evening, you would have looked at centers in, you would have looked at cast off 3/4, you would have looked at cross run, and that's the culmination of 3 difficult programming builds that would make that, bring it from a 5 down to a 2 for that evening alone. So all of that has to play, and it's really, really good to look at things that way.
If you really want to have fun sometime, let's lay the premise that you're going to call for a club that's really good. Not hot shots or not people that think they're good, but they're 95% challenge dancers, but they're down there to support their mainstream club, and write some material that can keep them entertained and thinking. It might be, I found that interesting yesterday while I was writing these sequences, to trying to find, oh, I haven't written any 2s yet. Let's go write a 2. I haven't written any 4s yet. Let's go write a 4. It was an interesting exercise for me.
I just got a note that the PDF file that I uploaded with the notes from this and the sessions, some people are having trouble downloading it. Is anybody else having trouble downloading that?
No, I did.
Oh, no, I was able to do that.
I had no problem.
Okay, I'm gonna
I
send
just
to,
clicked on it and saved it.
okay, so I've sent it to those that had difficulty. I've just sent it to you personally. If you still have trouble with it, send me an email and I'll email it to you. My email is Wilkerson at.
I could send out the handout that I've used before, but it has a different number of sequences than we've used here. And one of the things about these is I've edited them so that Taminations understands them. These others would be a struggle to work through with Taminations. Still probably useful, but I'll wait till I convert them.
I like the sequence that had the and in it, and I was thinking, oh, this is a transcription of a dance, and I guess the dancers are having a little trouble there.
I've edited that out already.
When
I wanted to see if Terminations would sweep 4 quarters.
Oh, just one thing, if you ever do have somebody transcribe notes, this was found out in Germany, and thankfully I wasn't the caller that did this, but they had a set into the monitor, and the monitor pickup was more sensitive than what went out in the speakers. And it was transcribed and sent out to the Callers Association. You might still find this in the active, but it was head square through 4 centers in. Oh shit, I didn't mean to call that. And the transcription came, oh shit, I didn't mean to call that. Because it wasn't heard on the mic, but he was saying it over here, but the monitor input was picking it up. So just always read your transcripts first.
Yes. When it comes to degree of difficulty in perception, when I was a young caller a couple of years ago, many moons ago, I misinterpreted the degree of difficulty of sequences. I thought sequences were difficult, which weren't for the dancers, and some others I thought they're dead easy, they struggled. So go dance to many callers, and go dance to callers that are not from your area, because the callers in your area tend to call all the same things.
That's an excellent point that we proved here, that some people said some of these sequences were easy because that's typical of what they and other callers danced in that local area. And others thought they were hard because their local dancers or they didn't call it in that area. Very good point. Plus, it's a lot more fun. I may have just uploaded the document that has this and the calls on it. Yep. Or I may have uploaded something that I shouldn't have. I don't know. We'll see what comes out. Yeah, things are very regional in this universal language.
Yeah, I have a very skewed version of what's difficult to dance or difficult in general. Being that I grew up as a teen competitive square dancer. And I've also been involved with the Teen Festival for years, obtaining mystery callers and making sure that the material that has been coming in, works or is okay for the kids to dance. So when you were saying, oh well, 5 is going to be the hardest ever, well, in my honest opinion about a 5, to me a 5 is going to be something that's never going to work in Taminations. Taminations just isn't capable of dancing that kind of stuff, much less the dancers.
I was limited to that yesterday while doing this, Brian. Yes, I thought of some things that would be cool to do, and they were just pushing the formation that just wasn't going to happen in Taminations. By the way, when I saw you online And I thought, oh, I'm talking hard and easy. I should change the scale. Brian's here.
No.
Yes. At the team competition, a number 5 would probably be a number 1.
Yeah. No,
Like Brian, I grew up in a rarefied club with hotshot dancers and whatever, and I started calling like immediately. And so if you had asked me any of these questions, any of these sequences back when I first started, I would be clueless. And in fact, I was pretty clueless about difficulty level for at least the first few years when I was calling. So if the new people are not totally sure or whatever, it's impressive that the consensus answers, which is a lot of so-called newbie callers here, came out to be accurate, and I don't think that's just because there maybe were some expert callers, correcting the average or something, because so if you're new and you're not real sure about judging the difficulty of these things, or even if you think you are, and maybe you're not as good at it as you actually think, don't feel bad, because I now I think I'm an expert on that, but I can tell you that when I started calling, I was absolutely clueless. I had no idea what was hard.
That's a problem of the new call. I have written a singing call figure, which is a favorite in my club, but I would not dare to call it anywhere else, at least not without 3 or 4 tips introduction to it, because it starts with hits past the ocean, Dixie style to an ocean wave, centers cross run, new center straight. Then the girls run reverse flutter wheel, half square through, trade by swing.
What's that half square through that got him?
Before it's past the ocean, Dixie style to a wave.
Oh, I agree. That's not commonly done, and it's very nice dancing. It's just not commonly done, so it would take people by surprise.
What was that again?
It's past the ocean.
Yes.
Dixie style to a wave.
Oh, okay. Actually, I have not used that one yet.
But you will.
Absolutely. I mean, I do Dixie style from a double pass through all the time. I just haven't done it from a quarter tag.
And what comes then is a mix, a centers cross run, new center straight.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to be using that. Thank you.
Well, I
do heads past the ocean, swing through Dixie style. That is cool.
Hits past the ocean, Dixie style.
I know. I said I will fall heads past the ocean, swing through Dixie style.
Yeah.
You're cruel, Bob.
But what? This is something I would not call to any dancers that I don't know.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'll only use it on my Sunday group, but I understand that.
And as a way to build up to that, you can do things like heads past the ocean and right and left through, just to get them knowing that they can.
Oh, no. I don't believe in breaking their backs and making it awkward,
Well, I'm just saying, or do a heads past the ocean turn through. Just start building to it by letting them know that they're.
We dance palms up here. That would be horrific. We would do past the ocean, trade, step through instead of turn through.
Well, I want people to start to learn that the right hand they just joined is the first part of the next call, so they could get into the Dixie Grand nicely.
Yeah.
But
you know what I find interesting, and I never actually thought about it that way, but if you think about the definitions that are written the way they're written, the way you're using that, I could see you getting a lot of arguments, because the Color Lab definitions for Dixie style says from an ocean wave, from a tandem, I should say. The ocean wave rule applies, but from a single quarter tag, not a quarter tag. Which is kind of silly, because you got 2 single quarter tags, but because it's not, that clarification in there would say, no, that would be improper. That's where the argument starts. But the theory is absolutely great. I love it.
Well,
here's where helping words can be a big thing. You say center start. If you say single file, that they might not know what that means. But if you say center start, that's a big clue.
Yeah, or on a double track or a single file Dixie style is very, very popular here in a lot of places of Australia. I know in South Australia, I've heard that called it. I've been to 5 dances there, and I've called a couple. I've never called it there, but I've heard it called there by a number of callers, and I've heard it.
Yeah, but the thing with the single file though is that they might not recognize that that's asking them to do more work because they have to analyze on the fly that mini wave is part of a single file. Where if you say center start, then that's a physical action that will just get them going.
Yeah, and where I look at it is, I think the reason that those become simpler is because the callers here have worked, and it's very much like your earlier comments of centers in, cross, run. That's been worked through and done, like wheel around and reverse wheel around. I hear that at almost every dance here. Other places I haven't heard it for 20 years. They're common in usage locally, which makes them easier to dance, so they become more acceptable.
Yeah, I will say this, that when I first introduced it to my Sunday group, it was probably 3 to 6 months before they became comfortable doing the Dixie style from any double pass-through position. When I first did it, they were slow at getting it, and they would get confused. But eventually, they nailed it, and they got proud that they could do it from that way.
The interesting part with Dixie style is that the standard starting formation used to be a double pass-through formation.
Yes, it was. That's where they did Dixie chain and other calls way back when.
Things of various sorts in Dixie style.
And that's where Dixie Grand is more frequently used than others.
Yeah.
Chris, it was interesting what you said, helper words. Sometimes they help. You've got to be careful at how to choose your helper words. This morning's session that Betsy did on party nights, she pointed out a lot of helper words that are actually helpful, especially to the non-dancers. I found calling in some countries where English isn't their primary language, that the best helper words are not saying anything but the call, not filling in with patter, which was kind of
Japan.
I was thinking of the Czech Republic specifically, but I'm sure Japan would have that different thing to think about also. But again, make sure your helper words help.
For the Czech Republic, you need to acquire Czech accent first.
Okay, what
Before they
came
understand
after,
you.
what came after your Dixie style? You got heads past the ocean, Dixie style to wave. What came after that?
Mix. Centers cross run, you center straight. Girls run.
Hang on.
Reverse flutter wheel.
Hang on. New centers trade. What was after that?
Girls run.
Yep.
Reverse flutter wheel. And a flutter wheel.
Yep.
Half square through. Trade by swing.
Comment. You could also say head slide through, go Dixie style to a wave.
Yeah, but then it becomes
In
easy.
fact, that's what I would start with, building their confidence. I would do a slide through, go Dixie style, and that's a now past the ocean Dixie style, same thing.
I've started with
actually it's actually not the same thing. If you go on the basic rules of calling, like if you said head slide through Dixie style to a wave, do you want only the heads to do a Dixie style, or do you want them all to do it?
Okay.
I think technically, I think it's just the centers are supposed to do it with that call.
You'd have to clarify on your own track.
Yeah, okay. You have to clarify it, but okay. Head slide through, zoom again, everybody Dixie style to a wave.
Bob, I started to do it different. I said, it's past the ocean, pull by, left touch a quarter.
There you go.
And you know, my dancers aren't superstars. I need to teach them what I want them to do, and I need to do the teaching so that I don't have to teach, but that I'm able to call. So I try to dissect the call so that I can use it for them in an easy way.
Sure.
So
If
I
you're-
put a link, or I put a link in the chat window to an article that was written by John Sobalski a while ago. It would have had to have been a while ago because John's dead now. So, but John was amazing. He had some really amazing things that he wrote, and this was one of them where he talks about what makes square dancing hard. And so it has a lot of really cool information in there. You can take a look at it.
Did you? Oh, you sent the PDF. Okay.
I have a success for not that I've particularly tried this, but for getting that Dixie style in there. If you say head slide through and then you got to throw in some, on a double track or single file wording, whatever, Dixie style. That you're going to break your timing there, because it just takes just a little bit too long to say single file or double track or something that everybody will understand. And depending on the group, they may understand slightly shorter wording or slightly longer, but you're chewing up some time there that you don't want to really chew up with those words. So head slide through, do a right and left through, and on a double track. See, they're going to you're saying that while they're still in the process of doing the courtesy turn, and so you haven't broken the motion, and you can get the exact correct wording out, and plus the flow for that is of course fine.
All this is sort of pointing out to that once you've got control, you can control the degree of difficulty and this almost the same choreography. You can control whether it's easier or harder. You can make it a 1, 2, or 5 depending on the helper stuff, and with excellent dancers that know what's coming, it'll all look the same to the outsider. But to the typical pretty good dancer, the helper building to it is going to make a big difference. It's learning to recognize what's harder, and then trying to get a grasp on being able to control your ability to create hard and easy.
What I would do, I'd have fun. I'm already got workshops going through my head. But I'd create a double pass-through position with the boys in the middle. Okay. And actually, I would like to call boys pass the ocean, swing through, spin the top to a Dixie style. And then it would be a normal right pull by, left touch a quarter. And doing the spin the top, the boys are moving up. They're not in that wave yet, so they could do the appropriate pull by to the left touch a quarter.
You could.
Thank you, guys.
But when the boys do a spin the top, which aren't all of them supposed to move up?
No, 4 boys are in the middle, and the boy ocean wave.
I'm joking. I'm being very sarcastic. Yeah, I'm being very sarcastic. The typical spin the top definition is everyone turn half by the right, and the girls go left 3/4, and the boys move up. Well, if you have all the boys in the wave, then you have a different definition apparently.
It's typical, Brian. That just went right over my head.
One of the a factor to go on the or maybe to go on a maybe a sub point of the list of things that make it hard. Everybody's got a list done. Don gave us a good list here. And some other people have some lists. I like his, but the one of the things in terms of unfamiliarity, one of the factors there is that if the dancers hear something and they're in an unusual formation, it's not necessarily they're not thinking I don't know how to do that, as much as they're thinking you can't do that from here. What? And so that's that's a thing to think about. Are you going to put them in some place where they are liable to even if you wish they could puzzle it out, are they liable to think you can't do that from here. And they might dismiss that thought. They might go, you can't do that. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. But again, you've introduced some hesitancy and in their action, and that's gonna add another fraction of a point to the difficulty.
Interestingly enough, Chris, whether they will get it or not has something to do with how often you call to them and how much they trust you. I've had dancers, just for laughs, regular dancers, that I'll call something that they don't know, and they start moving and get, because I've got them flowing with the right hand, the correct hand, and what have you, in that direction, and they'll get halfway through it before they realize I have no idea what this call is. But that's only because they trust me. At least they did before I did that to them.
Contrary to my favorite horror story as a new caller, I took a couple of squares of Tech Squares kids out to one of my very first dances outside of Tech Square, some group that shall not be named, but it was a group that was not too far from where your house was back in the day, and the club did not have a bad reputation. There's, it was a good club. Sure, they can dance and everything. And I went there and I called really vanilla stuff. I called a lot of stuff that was like sequences number 2 and 3 in your examples, if I remember right. Just really basic stuff. And but at some point I called a left square through, and and I noticed that some of the floor had trouble with it on this sequence, and I was at that time in my career boggled as to what could possibly be going on there. And then later, after I and my Tech Squares friends went out to not Denny's, but whatever that other pancake house is that used to be around, and we're sitting around, and one of the girls in the club says, "Oh, that one thing you called and everybody broke down. I was in the square in the back and we're trying to do the left square through 3, and the lady, she won't do it." And I'm like, what? And she goes, I tried to get her to do it, and she goes, "Oh no, dear, we don't do lefts."
I got to share with you something I did when I called for a group that couldn't do a left square through 3. I did head square through on the second hand, do a left square through 3. And the point is that everybody does a left square through 3 all the time after the first hand of a square through with the right hand. The rest of the call is a left square through 3. It's not an awkward call. Once they realized it, no problem.
Yeah, but you're a troublemaker.
Hang on, Chris.
I can tell.
Chris, hang on. Jeff Seidel?
Yeah, as many people use from a line facing out, left wheel and deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was one that came in the symmetry motions. It was the one because you do when you set a pass through to a left wheel and deal, double pass through, first go right, next couple go left as the symmetry opposition. But there's a lot of opposition to left wheel and deal, who's going to go in first, but never had any problem with it.
Many, many years ago, during the height of new calls, local caller Yikes Cameron wrote a call called Deal and Wheel, which is, I assume, the same you're doing with a left wheel and deal. Yeah. Never took on, never caught on, but glad to hear they're still dancing that movement.
Did that further get developed into the C3 concept drunk? Do a drunk wheel and deal?
I don't do C3, don't know.
Don, how would you teach wheel and deal?
How would I what? How would I what?
Teach wheel and deal from lines facing out.
Wheel and deal? Deal and wheel. Well, you consider the right ones are wheeling and the left ones are dealing. You have the right ones deal and the left ones wheel.
Okay.
Just the other couple go forward.
And that's why it's so difficult for couples to learn wheel and deal. If I'm going to teach wheel and deal and lines are facing out, I teach them first couples trade, right shoulders, and then I keep calling that. Now I tell couples do half a trade and couples face the middle, and that's called a wheel and deal. but I get them used to that right shoulder. They don't have to figure who's on the left, so I got to step forward with the right, blah, blah, blah. I make it automatic so that's clutter that they don't have in their minds when they're learning to do a wheel and deal. So the same thing approach, if I want couples to do a left wheel and deal, I'll have them pass through couples left shoulder, couples trade, so that they'll do it. So it's very easy to get a simple floor through that, just knowing, avoiding all the problem parts of teaching.
Oh, wheel and deal should be an A2 call.
I was going to say the way I teach it is first I teach them as couples. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. It should be an A2 call, as couples hinge and as couples trade and as couples roll.
Well, you know, we're actually not totally kidding about the about the as couples single wheel thing in the sense of teaching them about the action of the couples trade. I actually do use some wording that's I think similar to what Bob is talking about when I'm teaching the wheel and deal. Although I also emphasize the the right hand couple, you're going in first and so on. But I do use some of the same language that's a lot like the couples hinge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like mine because they don't have to think of which couple goes in first. It's couples go to a right shoulder and the rest is easy.
I put this up here, Bob Elling. This was the sequence you were talking with the boys spin the top and then also the symmetry version of the wheel and deal. We did a lot of that in Jerry's story and also in the presentations that we did with symmetry. So that lead right, swing through, boys run. We're just setting up the boys in the center of the double pass through. Zoom, girls out, boys in the center. I believe it was a pass the ocean, spin the top, and then on a single track, boys, Dixie style, right full by, left touch a quarter. Good. Chain down the line.
Contaminations can do it.
Sorry?
I say even contaminations can do it.
Yeah, it won't take that on a single track or a single file Dixie style, but that's how I do it. If I wanted to call it, I just put it in brackets. This is what I'm calling, and there's the contamination equivalence. Boys, full by, left touch a quarter. And then your symmetry version of the old pass-through wheel and deal, first go left, next couple right. It's just pass-through left wheel and deal. So the right-hand couple goes first couple go right, next couple go left. It's exactly the same, and it's very easy to dance. Dancers pick up on that very, very quickly.
But why is it a useful call? Pass-through left wheel and deal and roll.
Yep.
That gives you a different setup.
Over the long years since Don gave us a Ferris wheel, I noticed in the last decade or more that dancers in the wild seem to be less able or willing or comfortable to do the regular two-face line wheel and deal because they're so used to doing Ferris wheel. In fact, I've heard people call, and I think one of them is in the room, say something like "wheel and deal, don't Ferris wheel." I've heard those words come out of somebody's mouth, and so when you're teaching wheel and deal, though, this whole business of the as couples trade, you don't use those words, of course, but the whole business of getting them in that kind of a mindset is also crucial for when you're trying to teach them two-face line wheel and deal. And the thing I'm emphasizing there is you see the other couple in your line, you're trying to face them. That's what's going on here. So all that stuff with the motion of the couples going towards each other is valuable in more than one way.
Okay. There's something about
just before
Ferris
you
wheel.
go on there, Bob. There's a lot of people that were sending me choreographic sequences. What would you rate this at? What would you rate that at? Please, for those of you that are still here, if you have any of those sequences that you want Don to have a look at, how would he rate them compared to how you would rate them? Feel free to put that out in the open, discuss it. Nobody's judging anybody here. I've posted a list of the sequences on an attachment. You can look at them on your own, but if you want to look at a sequence, it's easy to pull terminations up like we have here. If we can, by all means, and it can be discussed why you think that's easy or why you think that's difficult, and get the expert's opinion, not just mine, because I'm not an expert in this.
I'm not sure that I'm an expert, having disagreed with some of you on the consensus of what the previous ones were. I'd be glad to look at sequences. Unfortunately, I don't have time right now to continue for hours to work on sequences, but if you can get them, email them to me, I'd be glad to look at them and email them back to you. My email address is donbeck@donbeck.org. The ORG stands for organized, but I'm not.
Okay, Don, I have a question. I think at one time you told me it was okay to do this. This is before Caller Lab took control of the calls. Head star through and veer left. Do that for me, Mel. Now, you could argue about it, but as I recall, we could Ferris wheel from here. Everybody is the couple facing in. Step forward to a two-phase line, wheel and deal. Now, what are your feelings, Don?
I wish that was accepted.
Okay.
The definition of of Ferris wheel, as I think of it, and I think challenge people have accepted, that you do it as couples extend and wheel and deal, do it phantom if you have to. And it would be a great thing to do from here. It flows very well. And whenever I've workshopped it, it's done fine. And I tried to introduce it to the world and people didn't accept it. But
why do they, what's the problem? I don't see the problem.
That's the problem right there.
What's that?
Okay.
They don't know how to do a couples extend.
No. Where the issue is there's callers at higher levels. I can tell you right now, something like that, if you said head slide through, veer left, or star through, veer left, or set it up however you wanted, okay? And with the outside couple, everybody Ferris wheel, they would adjust to that. The problem is at higher levels, you get this tendency, do not adjust it, don't fix it, especially if you're dancing, because that offset is there for important reasons.
Yeah, but and as couples extend from there, results in the proper two-phase line.
Yeah. And this is where the argument goes, because as couples is a concept that goes into advance. Well, guess what, guys? What we have here is the center couple stepping ahead, two dancers occupying the same spot. What is the rule in the basic level of two dancers occupying the same spot?
Well, there shouldn't be any difficulty. There shouldn't be any difficulty in coming up with language that just describes the correct action.
One time through and they've got it.
Yep.
Don, ever since you wrote the call, I've been teaching it that way. And when I teach it, I say, Don meant for you to be able to do it from here when he wrote it. I have been saying that for God knows how many years.
Actually,
we do recycle, and we don't teach them split, counter, rotate. We don't need to put as couples extend on the list in order to have language in Ferris wheel that does the as couples extend.
Yep. Nobody's arguing with that, Chris. The problem is they've isolated the definition to limit it to the two-face line.
I know they have. I just wanted to share with everybody. Don's intent was for you to be able to do it from here, and it's real easy to teach, and it's fun.
Yeah, I don't see what the. I mean, I understand why you can't legally just call it right now, but what I'm saying is why don't we fix the definition so you can, because maybe I'm missing something and being dumb, but I don't see a problem with fixing the definition so that you can do that.
It'd be nice if they would, because it's a nice way to get out of a quarter line like that. It dances smoothly. Dancers have no trouble once they understand what you want.
But I don't think challenge dancers are going to have any problem with that either. Although, maybe I'm missing something. So it's just a bureaucratic reason why we're not doing it.
No, there is a bit of an issue with putting that wording in the definition. What you'd really have to change with the wording of the definition is specific formations you can do it from.
Sure, I'm all for that. Again,
Whereas,
I'm not proposing adding as couples extend to the list. I'm saying that we can come up with equivalent language just like we do for many other calls.
right, but
and we could
that's
fix
where
this.
that's where the problem lies. If you tell them that they can do an as couples extend, then from facing lines of 4 you can call a Ferris wheel.
Actually, Bob, there's a slight correction to the timeline on that. The original, when I originally wrote Ferris wheel, I did not think of that extension, and that I added that 2 or 3 or 4 years later when I saw that was an
Oh,
obvious
it might have
extension.
been after Phoenix when I talked to you at Collar Lab and said it.
But it did get published in a few of the note services back then
Okay,
too.
now I would like to.
I don't
Chris,
think I don't
hang
think
on,
I made myself
Chris.
clear. I am not proposing to write the formal definition as couples anything. I'm just saying that there shouldn't be any objection to from higher level people who think that that might be the definition of seeing the lower level people go down and create some completely different language that does not have the word extend in it or as couples or anything. Some new language that would allow Ferris wheel to be used from that formation, and the language might simply be I haven't looked at the definition for Ferris wheel in a long time, but I mean it might just be a matter of tweaking the list of starting formations allowed to do the quarter line thing.
Don't you have the center forward
to a two-phase line? You could say it. But I like I say, I've been using it a long time. My dancers like it, and I always give credit to you, Don.
Okay,
Well,
and I'd just like to point out something here. What they say is the starting formation is two-face lines. It doesn't say how many. It says two-face lines, and that could be left-hand lines, right-hand lines. It also says here.
So already the definition's broken.
Yeah, no, it's not broken. It's not broken at all. And it says out-facing couples do their part. In-facing couples form a momentary two-face line in the center without stopping. Now,
well, if you don't have if you have a symmetric formation and you haven't specified parallel two-face lines, then the definition's broken because there isn't any in-facing dancers.
Okay, if you'd let me finish there. Where it is, the in-facing couple should walk forward enough that they could form a two-face line in the center. That's where they're defining it, because the in-facing couple has to work in the center. That actually works absolutely perfect from a quarter line, because you've got the in-facing dancers, they move forward, the passing rule from basic applies, the same position rule from basic applies, the in-facing couple will move forward into the center to form a two-face line. All of that applies, and all of that fits the current definition of Ferris wheel.
But they're not making a center line. They're making parallel two-face lines.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything. It says two-face lines.
Yeah.
Now, if you go down here, it says from the formation, as originally defined, there were other starting formations, but those variations have never been part of the Collar Lab program. And it was the Collar Lab program that isolated that to the parallel two-face lines, meaning two-face lines. That is the only place that says it's never been part of the definition. It doesn't say it's wrong. Doesn't say anything else, because you can do it the way the definition is written in its technical aspect. It just says doing it from a quarter line has never been part of the Collar Lab program.
I think we should just cross that line out. I think we'd have to adjust the language, maybe tweak it a little bit, but I don't see why it can't be done, and I can't think of a technical reason, of a technical objection to doing it.
Well, the technical objection to it is the fact that Ferris wheel itself doesn't actually adhere to the Ferris concept, which is up in the C3 level, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it says couples extend, do the call, squash the phantoms. That's the Ferris concept.
Well, no, because the Ferris concept is a half press ahead and then triple line whatever.
And we had a bit of this discussion earlier. That's in the C-level concept. When did the Ferris concept come into existence?
Well, apparently it's been rewritten since the original one, because I just quoted the original definition, but I think somebody thought that the triple line formulation maybe was more precise, but
Yeah, because there was a big argument a bunch of years ago when they did Ferris recycle as a quarterly selection. A bunch of challenge callers freaked out because if you have parallel ocean waves and you called Ferris recycle, you would do a half press ahead and a triple line recycle, which ends up in a parallelogram 8-chain 4.
Yeah, the last time I looked at the Ferris definition, you could not do a Ferris recycle because it wasn't press ahead, and it explicitly mentioned the lines and talked about squash. It was more like C1 Phantom in the way the definition was originally worded. So more complications.
Now, where my big issue, and this is what I brought up when we're talking about right now, rewriting the basic, the mainstream, and now we're looking at the plus definitions. I would love that callers that call advanced challenge up to whatever level take all of those concepts and all of those things from challenge, put them out of your mind. Don't even think about them. Don't even think about the aspect of, yeah, oh, we can call AC-DC at basic because it's just this, because this is what happens. The Ferris wheel, I don't know if the Ferris concept was in existence before the movement Ferris wheel came about.
No, the concept came after Ferris wheel, and
exactly.
people said, oh,
so
maybe we could Ferris other things.
Yeah, no, my point is, we get this a lot. Oh, well, at challenge level, we can do this, so we should be able to do this at basic because the concept is there. The concept is there at the higher level. Don't change the foundation to meet a concept at a higher level that developed after the fact. Here's the foundation. Okay. Let's learn the foundations, and from there, then we build challenge. Let's not go backwards.
Well, the problem is that we've already built challenge, and we demand consistency as much as we possibly can, all the way down to circle to the left.
But
how would you like some more background on that?
Yeah, there might be somebody here who knows more. I don't know.
Well, first of all, when Ferris wheel was originally written, it was written from either two-face lines or lines facing in, and we won't even get into what that definition is because it ends in a trade by, and nobody wants to know about that. But at one point where people started doing extensions of it, such as what were we guys just talking about? Ferris other stuff, Ferris this and Ferris that.
Yeah, like Ferris turn and deal would be the prototypical example.
There were two types of things going on. The challenge community was using it as couples extend, triple do the thing. In other words, those who can do the next call and the others do it phantom. And the mainstream group world was calling those facing into a Ferris wheel, Ferris and something else, whereas those facing out do a normal wheel and deal. And at one point, Deuce Williams called me and said, which of these do you prefer, Don? And I said, I prefer the outsides do a wheel and deal because it's more useful at mainstream. However, because the challenge community has been doing this the other way for a long time, that's the way I will vote for. And that's the way it stayed. It took a while, and there were complications with each method of doing it. Ferris turn and deal is a nice one. If I had come up with this idea 2 years later, it probably would have been squashed completely because they would have called it stretch wheel and deal, but stretch hadn't been invented yet. Who needed the Ferris concept? Another story I like to tell about the Ferris concept of extend, do it for real or phantom if you have to. My advanced or challenge group at that point was being taught mainstream and plus by a caller that wasn't quite as strict about teaching all position and everything. And he had taught follow your neighbor only where the guys go into the middle and turn 3/4. My dancers couldn't dance it if you had parallel waves with a guy and a gal going into the middle. But if I called it, but I'd been teaching them the Ferris concept and the other concepts, and when I called single Ferris cast 3/4, they were able to do a Ferris follow your neighbor from normal parallel waves, which they couldn't do from the original definition. So it's all how you look at things.
But when I was going through the crash course, the beginner course of that club that you mentioned, I missed the week when they taught follow your neighbor, and so the next week I showed up in a terrible panic. I'm like, I've looked at the wording of this follow your neighbor thing, and I can't figure it out. It sounds hard. Oh my God, what is this? Oh, panic. And so one of my many challenge friends who were in that club pulled me aside and said, it's just single Ferris cast off 3/4. And they had taught me the Ferris concept at that point, and I thought about it for a second. And I'm like, oh, okay.
There's also
No
the
big deal.
single concept that you're doing there.
Yeah, they had mentioned that. Yeah.
And Mel, when you were reading definitions, it's interesting because when I pictured this originally, I was picturing the in-facers going in and smoothly falling into that position. When you try to put words on it, it was hard to say it's okay to slosh into there. So the best we could come up with is basically follow the path of half circulate, form a momentary two-face line, and then wheel and deal.
Yeah.
And the people that insist on forming that two-face line drive me crazy because they're trying to make it go step by step by step instead of dancing a smooth movement. But
I know
again,
when I was taught to dance that originally in LAR, Ferris wheel, it was the hand went up, wee, and it was like a high five as you go past each other in the center. And that was as you put it in, the slosh in, but it allowed you to come in. You were already starting to turn. It just, those centers would do the hand touch. And it was just a realization of positioning, which is, what the hand gestures were for. Very few people teach it as formal, here, establish, wheel and deal with rigid regimentation, except at higher levels where that rigidity is necessary to whatever the different aspects of the calls are.
Well, I wasn't paying attention when it happened, but I can deduce what happened with the technical problem now. Is that, like I said, the original definition of the Ferris concept involved as couples extend and then do the call and then squish the phantoms. It did not have press ahead. It did not have triple lines. It was really written with, the actual wording said do this and squash the phantoms, and it was very restricted. And so now that the definition's been changed, the Ferris concept definition's been changed with the press ahead and the triple waves or whatever, is I'm sure that came about because people said, oh, there aren't enough things that we can do Ferris. There's turn and deal, and it doesn't seem like there's that many other great things to do that end because of this, because of what you have to do with the phantoms at the end, and it's not that useful a concept. Let's extend it. And so now what they've done is they've made it so that Ferris wheel is, in a sense, now broken, and it's going to be harder to fix it. But I still think we should come up with some way to do it because I love the quarter line thing, even though I never called it before. But yeah,
definitely.
And then we've got Bob Elling.
Bottom line is follow Bob Elling's lead and just use it. A quick teach and it catches on very nicely, and it just adds choreography.
And they like it. Now, as I recall, Ferris wheel, if you're facing out, Don, isn't it step forward, wheel and deal? It's not just wheel and deal, is it?
If you're facing lines facing out, oh
yeah, no, couples facing the couple facing out.
A parallel to
I always
lines.
The couple facing out takes 2 steps. And part of it is I like to teach dancing instead of getting to a position as quickly as you can.
I think,
and no matter what you do, it's going to take 6 steps. So if the people facing out take 2 steps forward, then do their wheel and deal, that creates the people going into the middle, the time to touch that two-face line and do a proper wheel and deal. And it doesn't take any less time to cheat versus dancing it beautifully. That's just my opinion.
An interesting point, Bob, is that what I originally thought of, and I think it may be written as, who knows, I haven't read definitions lately, but that the outsides do their part of a wheel and deal. So if you have a left-handed left face two-face line, the outsides would just wheel around towards the center. Whereas if you had a right-hand two-face line, the outsides would do a step ahead and then wheel around.
Just a clarification, Don, the definition states with the action is each couple steps forward. Doesn't matter if you're in phaser or out phaser. Each couple steps forward is the first part, like Bob says. That's written in the definition.
I mean,
And
mean
it
what?
says out phasers do their part, wheel and deal. In phasers form the momentary two-phase line.
Okay.
But Don, there's
We don't.
one reason why I like to have the two-phase line first, and it has a practical dancing aspect. When you look at dancers, when you observe them dancing, and they don't do the two-phase line, usually the ladies are in the center. The outside dancer is going in an arc to the center and forces the lady to go backwards. And I don't think this was your intention, that the ladies walk backwards and have the next part go forward again. This is why the two-phase line is there first.
Thank you.
I'll buy that.
We could legally disconnect the Ferris concept from Ferris wheel, and generally I would not be in favor of doing that sort of thing because I want the names of things to be consistent. But in this case, I would go for officially saying at challenge that Ferris wheel is not a Ferris wheel and deal, and just disconnecting them, and then altering the definition of Ferris wheel in a way that would be contrary to the Ferris concept, and it's Ferris wheel would just be its thing, and the heritage would be that the name inspired this other definition. And don't get confused and think that it's a Ferris wheel and deal necessarily, satisfying the challenge community that way.
That shouldn't even be a challenge issue or an issue of phrasing, because the challenge dancer should know how to dance basic, and callers should know that. And I think the last line in the definition of Ferris wheel is something like the expression or the phrase Ferris wheel and deal is improper. It states that right in the definition somewhere.
Well, it's improper at basic, but it's a perfectly legal call at challenge.
Is it?
That's
absolutely, because it's the
basic.
Ferris concept applied to wheel and deal.
You're doing a Ferris wheel and deal, yes. I can see that this has too much controversy, and we should just eliminate it completely. With the exception of singing calls, I think we would have a problem if we didn't have it for singing calls.
And but since Ferris wheel is now officially proper to be called from T-bone lines, also in the basic definition.
Well, if you've got that two-phase line in the middle, that couple in the middle is on a diagonal, but they're facing the outside couple. So you have two couples that are facing in. They will meet at the halfway point. That's what going to the center is. Or maybe it's considered do your part of. I don't know. But it is so friggin' easy to use and teach, and I have fun with it. If you don't like it, don't use it.
Well, here's my quandary, which is that I might like to do that, but if I'm, what happens when visitors show up at my club, and part of your answer might be, well, they're not idiots, they'll just do it too, it's obvious. But at the same time, I'm gonna feel bad that I might have called something improper, and what are the politics of that, and so that's why I would like to get it fixed on the definition list.
Make sure your visitors are mixed in with others and they just get dragged along.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They'll probably really. That's what I thought you'd say. Is that they'll do it.
Well, be aware of it and show the new people. That's what I do.
Well, is that what you're
if I
saying,
know somebody who doesn't might not know it, I'll show them.
Is that what you're saying? It's proper from there?
It said the in-facing line to a bend the line, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
At what
proper.
level?
You can deal from here.
At what level?
Basic.
What are you calling from here?
That would be improper because you're restricted in the formation arrangement to two-phase lines. Those are not two-phase lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that as couples T-bones are a let's use the word proper or something. Appropriate might be the real word.
Look at the
It
definition.
all depends on who you're calling to. You got to use judgment there.
I did a session called "Things That Are Not Written Down About Square Dancing That You Need to Know," and I should have put that on the list. I think I actually did have something like it on there.
On a scale
the
of
way,
1 to 5, it's a 5.
That's a great formation to do. Everybody do your part Ferris wheel, you're home.
Do your part is, that's also in the basic concept. You would have to say, do your part. Absolutely, but not just call a Ferris wheel.
Yeah, I'd go along with it for do your part. And of course, I've danced this particular thing a million times.
I have to look back when they have changed it, but it was in there that if you have a two-faced line and the in-facing line, in-facing bend the line, you do a Ferris wheel. Was also proper in the definition. They must have changed it.
If you go that way, why don't you just call well, I guess you can't say as couples, but suppose we just turn that into a single formation, and why can't you do T-bone split circulates at mainstream? And maybe somebody would say, well, maybe you can, but I would disagree with them. I don't think T-bones are really kosher in that way at mainstream, even though that may not be written down somewhere, and even though there might be other language that would suggest that maybe it's okay. I'm not buying it.
I think forcing the dancers to think that hard about an ending formation, especially basic and mainstream, because your T-bone is not, if I did a circulate and I was a couple facing out, I would end as a couple facing in. If I put myself in T-bones and I do a circulate, am I doing a 3/4, a 2/3, or a 7/8? And which way am I going to end up facing, especially if the circulate is in the facing concept? Guido, with response to your question, since 1981, they changed it to the starting formation as two-face lines. And back in 1981, it was starting formation two parallel two-face facing lines.
Yeah.
Parallel two-face lines. So it was before that if it was in there.
Well, there's always the answer that I give to a caller who's at the dance, and I call it, and the whole floor does something that I want him to do, and he comes up to me at the end of the tip and says, you can't call that, it's not legal. And my answer always is, no, you can't call it, I can, everybody did it. I know how to set people up for success, and I do that. Does it always fall exactly? No. Color Lab only recommends things. They're not the God of Almighty who's going to send thunderbolts if you do it wrong.
But what I said, the current definition of Ferris wheel reads in the second paragraph of the comments, from the formation two-faced line plus the couple looking in bend the line, the call Ferris wheel is proper. This application is uncommon. Each couple does their part. That's what the current definition says.
Okay.
Oh, so you're saying it explicitly says you can do this formation.
Second paragraph of the comments, Mel. Way down.
Oh, well, then I'm okay with it. But I wouldn't want somebody to intuit from that means that in general T-bone choreography is kosher.
Bob, when you talk about callers saying that's not legal, but your dancers do it anyway, I've had groups that are regulars of mine, and somebody will come in and say, why did we do it that way? And another dancer will say, because Don wanted us to do it that way. They know what the deal is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that might happen.
Mel, can I share a square for the screen for a second?
Absolutely.
Let's try again now that you're not. This is just a very slight variation on Ferris wheel that I use sometimes. Get him into a formation like this and say, finish a Ferris wheel. And everybody does it.
Common.
Very nicely.
That's a lot more common than the other one.
I'm curious how you guys get into it. I don't like the way I get into it, but I usually do it with half sashayed lines, do a star through, trust me, veer to the left, and the centers will veer to the left like this, and the outsides will trust me and veer to the left even though they're not facing anybody. Cam Nations won't do that. I had to fudge with it here, but other people have a good way to get into that.
As couples extend.
Well, I don't want to say as couples extend at a mainstream dance, but
well, especially since this formation is not an as couples three-quarter tag formation.
True.
This is not the result of an as couples extend. This is a result of an as couples press ahead, which is different.
So how do I get them there in mainstream aside from what I do?
Good question.
You guys are really helpful.
I'm thinking.
Well, you were saying that it's commonly done, so I was just wondering if it's
I
common.
don't recall the setups. I really don't. How do you create an offset setup at mainstream?
I think what I'm thinking is that you have some dancers who actually will dance the call fold if you tell them, and it's going to involve a fold and a star through, and maybe some people U-turn back or trade or something, whatever, something like that. It's going to involve a fold.
This setup I would create from a two-phase line, parallel two-phase lines, with everybody do a split circulate and work from there. Split circulate, recycle.
There's the setup. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it at mainstream, so I did it at basic.
Split circulate from two-phase lines?
Yeah. Then you have offset ocean waves.
Can you see that on your screen, Don?
I zoomed in so I can. Okay, a step ahead. That'll work it.
I don't think that's the result of a two-phase line split circulate, because the out-facing couple is going to do a partner trade for their circulate, and they're done.
No, what
and the other
doing,
people are going to walk forward and crash into them.
And,
what he
and
said
have a
is
two-phase line and have an ocean wave. Because of the ocean wave rule, same position rule.
Okay, I think we've got three different conversations going on here. This heads lead right, veer left, everybody step ahead. We'll achieve that at basic. Guido, what was the way you were doing it?
I would go in a parallel two-phase line. And ask everybody split circulate. I'm not sure if termination can do this, but your heat
we did a split circulate from here. Essentially, what you'd have is do the leaders trade.
Yeah. And your original side couples now just step ahead, and everybody have step into an ocean wave.
But the head zone move. Yeah, that won't show contaminations, which probably means a regular floor. Did it work?
Well,
That's what you get.
This was a fad in Europe a couple of years ago, when somebody started to do well, it was still in the 90s, when somebody said, from two-phase lines, let's do a split circulate twice, and at a dance, and I told my dancers, well, just do it. It's not possible to do it, actually, but do what they want. Don't start an argument.
The only issue I would have with the split circulate is, in Don's example, you have the couples are in a tandem setup. Yours are in facing box setup.
No, I'm first in a pair in offset ocean waves, and from that ocean wave, I can create the formation that Bob had or Don had.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, so you're saying that, so what is it you're planning on calling? I agree that you get the two ocean waves totally offset, but what is it that you're planning on doing after that?
Pass through Ferris wheel.
No. There's
No, I would have to really think about it to get in tandem couples, but like if you have
you're in a 16 matrix with each side of it populated, and you have 4 phantoms in front of each ocean wave, and the ocean waves are not. Nobody in the ocean wave is immediately adjacent physically to anybody else.
Okay. How about you try pass to the center?
Something like this.
It doesn't like the offsets in damnation, so.
But from here you can say something like have a wheel and deal and centers check the two-faced line. You know, it's easy to call in mainstream, but I'm not prepared for this type of choreography yet, or just in the moment. I really have to think about how to get to tandem couples in the moment. But I would do something like make it a two-faced line, have a wheel and deal in the two-faced line, and have the centers connect to a two-faced line. And then define something for a pass to the center or a dive through or whatever. And then I have the tandem couples.
The thing that I would see the dancers doing though is if you put them in the offset, if you swing through boys run, if you had them or even got them to the lines facing out, whichever one you want to do. If you want to do the wheel and deal, have those centers do the wheel and deal, and the other ones, they would automatically adjust into that quarter line, and you'd still have to have the centers veer to the left.
But I wouldn't let him adjust. I wouldn't let him adjust. I would tell him to adjust.
Yeah.
So I'm not a real friend of having the dancers decide what they want to do.
But I think doing it that way would fall into the category of what Bob Elling just said was, you can't do that. No, I can do that. My dancers will do that. I can talk them through that. They will succeed at it because I know what I'm doing and I can deliver it in such a way they understand me.
Would it have this?
I look at it, if you've got 80% of callers would look at that and say, okay, from your offset, I want you to extend, swing through boys run, wheel and deal, but maintain your offsets in there so you get a two-face line in the center and the other stays facing. You know, if you have to put that much explanation into it for the dancers to understand it, it ceases to be the dance. It's more of a technical solution to a
well, if
it's
you
not
can
something you do
create
just
that
for fun.
offset, excuse me, go ahead.
No, it's not something you do just for fun.
Yeah.
You do it with a purpose.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You're on, Bob.
Okay, if you can create that offset wave, okay, then you would do a boys run, the outsides arch and dive through, and you've got your two-face line.
Yep.
You know, with the centers and two-face line and the outside couples facing out. For body flow, I'd say very center girls trade, everybody finish their Ferris wheel or something.
Yeah, something like this.
But yeah, it's real easy to, if you can create the offset wave, then you create the offset two-face line facing couples and have the outsides arch and dive through. But you've got this, you've got a two-face line. Say you could only get to here. Outsides arch, dive through.
The big problem here is, by the way, going to be the split circulate, because most floors are not going to know how to. They don't know the ocean wave rule well enough. They're going to.
I agree.
They'll just break down on the split circulate.
Chris, depends on your area.
You can create the offset waves. If you can create the offset waves, then that's how you go. Proceed.
Yeah, no, I agree. It depends on the area, and in theory, they should know that. But there is no club that I have called for, no plus club I've called for in the last 25 years in the United States that would do that. They would all break down.
That's a
Well,
sick.
I can tell you a whole bunch of mainstream dances in German that would break down, but I also can tell you a whole bunch that would not.
Okay. So I'm going to create the problem that I'm calling to newer dancers and I want to get them through it. Okay. This is what I would do. Are you ready, Mel?
Sure.
Square them up.
Got that part down.
Yeah. Heads lead right. Veer left. Everybody step forward. Step ahead. There'll be a two-face line in the middle. Okay. Now the heads are the outside couples partner trade. because I wouldn't call Ferris wheel from there because that's all they were doing. Then I would play with these couples, you know, and work in your box, do a right and a left through. Okay, Tam-nations can't handle right and left through.
Strictly speaking, if you were to use the proper technical language, then right and left through isn't, I don't know if it's legal from here. I think you have to use some words to make it legal. However, real dancers would certainly do the right and left through.
Okay. And that's, I only call the real dancers. And if I want to call the fake dancers, I get out Vic Cedar's program and go for it.
And
I call the challenge dancers, and they'll get upset if you do things that are not correct.
And if you're calling to like real plus dancers or real mainstream dancers, and they're in this kind of formation, if you call long enough to them, eventually they will end up in regular facing lines of four. The offset will disappear.
If you making sure you use some word like, you know, in your box or something, you know, and emphasizing to them maybe with some other words that they need to not fix it, or, you know, do what, keeping them in the formation will be the trick, because they don't have a formal word that they know for keeping them there, but you can say some things to get them to do it.
By the way,
so Bob, now they've done your right and left through, pass through, partner trace, swing through, spin the top, slide through. They're back here.
Yeah, okay. Then you pass through and finish your Ferris wheel. But I don't have to do it from a tandem. I would, this is easier, finish your Ferris wheel.
Well, Bob, you're addressing exactly the only problem that I had with Mel's, I think it was Mel's approach, which was to just say, you know, veer left, you got your regular two-face lines, everybody step ahead, centers, you're connected, I'd probably say that. And doing it from there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think at all. The only thing is that it seems contrived. Just if you immediately just say now do a Ferris wheel or whatever, finish a Ferris wheel, it's just like, you know, what was the point of all that? It was contrived, it was more trouble than it's worth and whatever. But what you're doing is addressing that concern by putting them in this formation, working with them a little bit in it and trying to keep them in it, and then finishing it. So that's the and of course and as in your example, if you do something with some nice flow, when you actually go to do the Ferris wheel, that's nice.
Bob, I get I even get an easier way to get into those into this formation, but it does not. Well, it also enhances the degree of difficulty. Getting the two. Well, I don't think Tam-nations can do it, but for the first part, it's okay. Here's the right and we are left. And from here to half of a single hinge, half of a couple's hinge, then you have your two-faced lines in tandem. Offset.
Half of a couple's hinge. Oh, yeah. Half of a couple's hinge. Oh gosh.
Now you're just being nasty, but you are correct.
Boy,
that's what I said.
Like
nice diagonal parallelograms.
Yeah. You like Dave Wilson, don't you?
No, but actually this is an easy way when you said when your couples are out of sequence, call them in a half a couple circulate.
Okay.
Call them in a couple circulate, do half of a couple's hinge, trade by, and promenade back home.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree, but I will tell you this. This is what I know as a nightmare formation, especially below, plus and below. Why? Because they're toward the diagonal corner of the room, and you call a call, and some couples are going to go one way, some couples are going to go the other because they're not flush with the wall. They've lost total orientation, and generally speaking, to a plus level or below, it only takes 3 calls and half your floor is broke down. No matter how easy.
It won't do anything from there because it doesn't recognize the partner relationships.
But Bob, just generally speaking, I'm calling real hexagon for a group in a pentagon room.
I can understand that.
And
I
teach new dancers to I teach people who do not square dance. I teach them square dancing using real hexagon because the group's dancing real hexagon in a pentagon room. So don't tell me about corners of a room in a dining.
Guido, that's very understandable because
we're talking to a
topic
normal
is
floor.
American square dancing, and from my own experience, having worked with them, anything in a pentagon is either really good or really bad. There is no in between.
You supply them with blinders so that they're not bothered with what's going on around them.
No, we used to line the chairs and make a square around the room and use the squares or the chairs for walls.
Anyway, my original thing is if you want to use that as a gimmick sometime to finish your Ferris wheel, I found it very easy to just have half sashayed lines, star through, trust me, veer to the left, and call it once and just don't make a big theme of it.
I'll do your part, veer to the left. Ferris wheel. Okay.
I live about 1.5 miles down the road from a particular room, and there used to be a courtyard in the middle of the complex, which was the Pentagon, and they had a club that used to dance there. It was called Ground Zero Squares.
Yeah, when I learned to square dance, some of you know her, Jeanette Steuble.
Oh yeah.
She was telling us to align to the walls of the room, and then the square drivers from Zurich had their student party, the annual student party in January, for the first time in a different room, and it also was a pentagon room, and gone was the adjust to the walls.
Well, it also explains the logic of why women are more spatially oriented on the dance floor than men are, because the expression is there's a woman for every man in every corner of the world, but God made the world round.
We had in New England here, a hall that a very good club danced at that was a octagonal, 8-sided room.
Kresge.
No, well, I wasn't thinking of Kresge.
The Kresge basement had a room like that.
Yeah, true, but I'm talking Yankee Twirlers. And the dancers, the first 3 rows of dancers, there used to be 15, 20 squares danced there regularly, a lot of traveling callers. And the first 2 or 3 rows of dancers would line up with the wall, with the stage where the caller was. And then the rest of the floor would line up 45 degrees to them, facing different walls. And it took me a long time, and it used to drive the callers crazy, of course. And it took me a long time to figure that out why. But the reason was it had tiles on the floor, nice wooden tiles that were aligned 45 degrees to the stage. So the ones that weren't close to the stage would line up with the tiles on the floor and that set of walls. And the ones close to the stage would line up with the stage and the caller. So the floor was a total mess, but they danced very well all the time anyway. You know, guys, I think it's time for me to bow out. I've had a lot of fun listening to you discuss these things. Hopefully the original idea of analyzing or proving that you have a feel for whether calls are easy or hard made sense to you. And we should play games with this more again. If anybody wants me to look at some of your sequences and decide where I think they are hard or easy or crazy, feel free to send them to Don Beck at donbeck.org. And hopefully we'll see you guys again around sometime.
Maybe you can come back sometime and we can come up with some things to fight about ping pong circulate.
Oh.
We'd have to program about an 11-hour session for that one.
Yeah, ping pong facing paths.
Yes.
Just as a note, Reinhold Rodig has put down, he's presenting next week. He's put the full open version of Colorama with access to all of it for 3 months. That I've just posted the link there and the presentation slides for next week. If you are coming in next week, if you wanted to load Colorama on your system, please do so and just have a look through it with the user guide. It'll make it a lot easier. I'll be putting that out in the link on Facebook and also in the email for everybody to access it. But put it on your system, load it up. He can remote access through that link and work everybody, so he can work it as a tutorial on your computer working. So that's the link there. It'll go out in the email notification and on Facebook for next week. Dawn, as always, a great pleasure. I don't think there's ever been a session where I haven't seen conversation generated on topic for at least an hour and then off topic for, it can go on forever. So you are always welcome to come back anytime.
Think of a topic I'm willing to give my 2 cents worth with, which is frequently doesn't agree with everybody else, and that's what generates the conversations. But
well, that's actually why I love doing these sessions, because we did the same thing with Bob Elling's session before. He comes at things from a different perspective. You come at things from a slightly different perspective as Daryl when it comes to mental imaging and others that do things. But the different perspectives of doing the same thing is what takes a new caller and says, I understand him, but I don't understand. They're saying the same thing, but I don't understand it. And it's just different ways. What works for you is what works best for you.
The same way.
That's why I love different perspectives.
That's the same thing about teaching dancers. Not everybody learns the same way.
Yeah.
And in some cases, not everybody learns. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say thanks for hanging around, guys. It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Good seeing you again, Don.
Good seeing you, Bob.
Twice in one day.
Yeah, wow.
Bye, Don. Chris? Chris?
Oh, me?
Yeah. About 2 weeks ago, we talked about the anything step to a wave.
Anything step? What are you saying?
Yeah. The proposals to add or delete calls from the basic program was single circle to a wave should be added, and somebody said those to a wave should be deleted.
Oh yeah.
Okay, after our conversation, I pondered a little bit about it, and still thought, okay, I put that on the wish list in some form.
Oh, the single circle?
No, anything to a wave.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have single circle to a wave, and we don't have dosado to a wave, but have single circle, anything to a wave, and dosado and whatever.
We have to be careful that people don't then say, oh, well, so now it's legal to call a square through to a wave.
And the only person who negatively responded was a caller who calls A and C, but doesn't even call basic or mainstream to a club like that.
I would personally not like anything to a wave.
I don't want it to be called that, but I don't mind specific examples of certain things.
Yeah. What I had in mind was something like single circle, anything to a wave, or dosado, or stuff that is relatable to dancers, but not. I just wouldn't want.
Part of that discussion, the issue with step to a wave, yes, it's there. Single circle to a wave. A lot of that discussion, a lot of people use single circle step to a wave. Single circle to a wave is no different than do-si-do step to a wave or do-si-do to a wave, which came more or less about because it was easier to fit into the singing calls and it flowed better off the tongue.
Yeah.
The reason why we can't have single circle to a wave is just bureaucratic nonsense of thinking, well, there's too many things on the list and maybe we should get rid of do-si-do to a wave or some idiocy like that, right? I mean, there's no real reason.
That's not where the problem lay. The problem lay with is if we have single circle, which is already on the basic list, or
it is
joint hand circle 2, and you denote an area. And they're saying, well, if we do single circle, that says a halfway, circle halfway, and that's limiting it, and because that's the only one that we have that. And then the argument came out that's not true because we have circle to a line, which is a half circle. We have all sorts of things that circle halfway or express the fraction. So the concept is already there in BASIC. Why not expand it to that? And I agree. I have no problem with single circle to a wave. I have no problem with do-si-do to a wave.
Yeah, I would very strongly object to dropping do-si-do to a wave, and I would very strongly say that we should have single circle to a wave.
My motivation was different. My motivation was I have single circle, I have do-si-do in basic 1, and I have anything to a wave in basic 2. Where swing through is in the ocean wave and past the ocean, everything ocean wave, except for the faulty move to put all it circulate into basic 1. But if we would have it that way, we would not have the do-si-do calls in a program basic 1 for a formation that is only invented or introduced in basic 2.
So do you call do-si-do 3/4 to a wave?
Yeah, but that's not the problem. What I was thinking is I'm advocating to have a sound teaching order for education of dancers and for choreography means. And if you have, they decided to have basic divided into 2 parts, I'm okay with that. But if they have it in 2 parts, don't use calls for formations in one program that is not, where the formation is not there.
Yeah, well, this is where the defining differences used to come. Back in the old teaching order, you had your basic program had these, but in the teaching order, you would have like ladies chain, ladies, and you got 4 ladies chain, but you got 4 ladies chain 3/4. That's a little bit later in the teaching order. The same kind of principle. It would still be part of the family, which would be in there, which was as such.
Yeah, but
I honestly don't have a problem. I like do-si-do to a wave, even though I'm quite at odds with somebody that I have a great respect for, and that's Barry. He says, well, stop using do-si-do to a wave. Nobody uses it. It's a wasted call. It's not a wasted call.
Who says it's a wasted call? What?
You can just say step to a wave, ladies trade. Yeah, but if I'm doing a singing call and I want that in there, I can say do-si-do, step to a wave, ladies trade, or I can say do-si-do to a wave. The problem with do-si-do to a wave and why so many callers hate it is because it became a crutch for calling. Do-si-do to a wave, swing through. It's not necessary there because you don't have to step to a wave. It's a helper for the dancers. I personally don't have a problem. Some callers do, some callers don't. I like them. Yes, Jeff.
Do-si-do to a wave.
Hang on, we don't, Jeff.
Yeah, that's like up to the middle and back all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, but you can even make bad choreography with any subset of calls that we come up with.
Absolutely. But
I mean, you can call a boring dance or you can call an interesting dance with, and the list of calls you're using is really not, and this of course points to the to a meta problem of the we don't have any variety, so we need to move up to plus where there's more calls, even though we can't dance yet, and the caller didn't have time to actually teach us anything. ...
And what Jeff is saying, and I agree with, the do-si-do to a wave became a verbal crutch as opposed to a dancing movement, the same as forward and back did. Do-si-do to a wave, swing through, boys run, and it was called just like that in a stream, as opposed to do-si-do, swing through, boys run, giving them time to dance, pass through, bend the line, go forward and back, and a right and left through. That's how it was called, because it was just part of that verbal pattern rather than part of the dance. And that's not the dancers, that's not a bad movement, that's not bad anything except for bad calling and bad delivery timing. And that's what we should be correcting, not saying, well, nobody uses this. No, they use it, they just don't use it correctly.
When I use forward and back both ways, almost like it's 2 different calls. Yep. I use forward and back sometimes to mean check your lines, and if you were behind in the choreography, now here's your chance to catch up, don't do the call. And then and a lot of people hardly do the call anyway. And then I also teach them, you know, a real forward and back, and they can tell from the music and the delivery if the guy wants them to do a real old-fashioned forward up to the middle and back. It'll usually come up in a singing call.
Well, when I do mine, you'll hear me, like Jeff, John, Scotty, you, Linda, you can all tell. You'll hear me say, you know, pass through, bend the line, go forward and back, and it'll be like that. Every now and then I'll go, you know, pass through, bend the line, or get myself into these lines. Lines, go back, then forward, and forward again. Do the right and left through. You know, just for that little bit of, oh yeah, that's right. It does take 6 beats to go forward and back, or at least 4 beats to go forward and back wherever you are.
I don't think a lot of callers realize what a good call forward and back can be.
Oh, it's a brilliant call.
It's body flow correction sometimes. The example would be lines past the ocean. Boys are on the outside, right? You wouldn't call boys run, bend the line, because that would be awkward, right? But if you call boys run, everybody go forward and back and bend the line, is friggin' smooth as you can get. You can't get smoother than that.
Oh, so you call forward and back from lines back to back, or
I do, absolutely. And when I was at Caller Lab, we were doing a thing about how to fix a call that was non-symmetric. So they got them to a situation where, imagine you're in the two-face line and only one of the outfacers was to do a wheel around or something. And they got him into this, and they ended up calling the boys run. And it was so friggin' awkward. They said bend the line normalizes it. And I mentioned I would never call that. I'd say everybody go forward and back and bend the line. And all of a sudden, bend the line is a natural flow because of the backing up part into the bend the line works beautifully.
I've seen callers use forward and back from two-face line. I've seen it from inverted lines. I've seen it from all sorts of things. And it's a great flow breaker for establishing a pause to generate a brand new flow. I did have one question. Bob, you mentioned something before.
Well, it's more than just breaking the flow. When he's doing that two-face line with the bend the line, he's fixing the flow on the
that's what I mean.
For the people coming back, it's nice.
When I say it's a flow breaker, it's what I call one of the formation establishment movements or formation establishment sequences. It's to reset a formation to start a new flow. That's what I mean by a breaker. It ceases one and it starts a whole new flow.
Yes.
Yeah. You use do-si-do 3/4 to a wave, which I have seen, I have heard. I have never in my life heard anybody call, at least up to A1, because that's as far as I call, anything that flows smoothly after that. What in the heck would you call after do-si-do 3/4 to a wave?
Head square through do-si-do 3/4, boys sashay nose to nose, and a couple circulate.
Okay, so basically a slither.
What? Yeah, basically it's a slither. But at basic, you can't call slither, so you call sashay nose to nose. And never had a floor not do it.
Okay.
And by the way, that was an old call that used to be called sashay through.
Yep. No, I've never heard anybody call. I've heard do-si-do 3/4 to an ocean wave, and then they start with things like center start swing through. What in the hell are you doing? That's
bad flow. You gotta look for good flow.
And they say, oh, well, the boys are, let's do a left swing through.
Or you could do-si-do 3/4 to a wave and request a certain person do a U-turn back. Either the
Of course, you could call everybody go forward and back.
Yeah, thank you.
The only thing I don't like about the forward and back with the people facing out, especially from the two-face line, from lines back to back, I've seen people do that, and the dancers just think it's a funny joke mostly. But even though, yeah, sure, it feels fine. But the thing that I don't like about the two-face line or the two-person, the mini-wave version, is just the people backing up. I'm just afraid that two people coming at each other from opposite directions trying to get really close, unlike the lines back to back where they're not going to hit the other line probably because there was enough space there. When they're trying to come back to the joined formation, I'm just nervous that somebody's going to get hurt. That's all.
Part of it, you know how you
From a
do
two-phase
broken,
line?
you know how you do broken calls. One of the things that I saw in Europe, I think it was Al Stevens and Dave Prescott and Hat Pope would often do is from the two-phase line. And they were very notorious. They always set this up. You knew it was coming. Go forward, long pause, and back. You'd hear that go forward. Everybody wink at your partner and come back and do something. And eventually what they do is from the two-phase line, everybody go forward, center couples trade, and now everybody go back. And then they'd set those things up just to make sure that that move was broken out like that.
Oh,
it's a bit of a gimmick.
Thank
but
you. I got a
Yeah.
good thing to do.
That's one thing these sessions are good for is the, hey, let me write that down.
Well, that's not
Absolutely.
mine. I cannot remember the callers, but it was quite often used in Europe in the 80s.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
But
It
you
gives
have to-
credibility to the sequence.
You know,
Although it's centers trade and then back up is not the best flow, but that's okay.
which is essentially, what are you doing? You're doing a couple circulate, couple trade, but it's, it does work. I don't know why it works. But
I feel like
I'd call it once in a while just for fun.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just a little fun. It's a gimmicky thing, but it adds that variety that you could do.
I would like to state for the record that I feel an awful lot like I tell the callers from Europe, you're crazy, but I really appreciate the fact that I'm getting to talk to them and hear their perspectives on things.
I thought it was really, really fascinating. The surveys that Don was doing, where everybody was marking a 4. European callers were predominantly on you'd have a couple of 2s, majority 3s, and a couple 4s, and everybody else would be 4 and 5. And I thought that was strange. And then I looked at different calls. It started looking at the correlation of calls. The ones he had the wheel around, the Australian callers were saying 2 and 3, and everybody else was using 3 and 4. And it just really shows you, if we did a survey like this, how would you rate this call, and then how would you rate 20 sequences going out to get that statistical norms to find out what the balances are between what calls are done, what calls are not done, what is standard, what is not standard in different parts of the world. And I think that boils down to the discussion we're having at the beginning with definitions and abbreviated definitions and how they're used, and all of that kind of stuff that I was having with Clark. In Europe, in Japan, in Czechoslovakia, in China, in New Zealand, I won't say Australia because they can almost speak English, but in New Zealand, they translate the definitions from the definitions so that it can be understood and used in full. And that's the whole definition, the start, the annexes, the introductions, the rules, and everything else. Whereas in a lot of places, a lot of callers pick up the abbreviated definition with the dance flow, and that's the only part of it they ever read. And it really, really makes a difference as to how they call.
I've actually, as a new dancer caller, with being on Zoom, I've been going to as many different dance groups as I can. And I have found some groups that are similar, and there's been 1 or 2, and I'm going, oh wow, this is completely different. And it's really interesting,
What do you think about Julie's group?
Oh, I like her. But I mean, I had been warned that the European groups would have more left-handed stuff, and that's definitely true. But I am learning the much more this way about the left-handed stuff.
What I found real interesting, you mentioned that the left-hand call. When I was learning to call, the aspect of choreographic symmetry, in your foundation modules, was part of the teaching process of teaching a new caller. We have the 5 foundation modules. Well, it's the 5 foundation modules and symmetry, and that was part of the beta. You got to touch a quarter, all 8 circulate, boys run. Well, part of that foundation module was left touch quarter, all eight circulate, girls run. You know,
Once I started picking up on that about a month or so ago, it was like, oh, this directional symmetry that could be really fun. So when yeah,
and the reason for it was it wasn't about directional symmetry. It was about eliminating overflow for smoother dancing. And that's what it was all about. That's why if you do, you try and set up, you can call a nice dance with very, very big, 2 modules, your 5 foundation modules, a corner box, a partner line module that's focused, your foundation modules. That's why you use symmetry, so that you could have this going around right, going around left. Your symmetry would break up your overflow. And that was part of the caller training when I was learning how to call over there. And when I moved back to Canada, it was only the really, really experienced callers would even talk about symmetry. And it was a presentation in itself, which was an hour. You'd do it, and then you'd never see it again. And I don't know why it does that, but different callers. I know if Bob, do you still call for the tech squares there, Bob?
Who?
You.
No, I live in California.
I'm sorry, I was mixing you up with Clark, I guess. Yeah, would have been Clark Baker then. Well, but and Chris, I don't know if you do or not, but
that's where I learned to dance, and that's where I learned to call, and I used to teach large portions of their crash course from time to time. And I used to do a lot of their advanced and challenge workshops, teach those. But I don't live up there anymore. It's been a long time. So now the only time that I see those guys is when I'm up there, doing like a C3 dance or something.
Right from the onset of new students coming in, I've never danced before. I'm going to take square dancing as my elective or my community activity or whatever it is. It's left hand, right hand, it's everything and anything.
At what they did at Tech Squares, most of the time when I was there was no academic credit or anything for the for that. But we did do an experiment one time where we hooked up with the PE department, and I taught I taught a beginner class for credit on a different night than the main club. Now since that time, because that was quite a while ago. Since that time, at least for some period of time, and maybe still today, they managed to get the PE department to go along with the idea of giving credit for people who were taking the course, which nerds at MIT are always looking for some good PE thing that you can do that isn't really PE.
Yeah, well, they go beyond that, because I know it's mathematics and everything else, but there's at least one master's and a couple doctoral theses on the kinesthetic mechanics and the mathematics of square dancing.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah, and they're fascinating reads. I get lost in the math of it, but it's absolutely fascinating reads when you look at, what did you write your doctoral thesis of? Oh, the mathematics of square dance choreography. What?
Well, I know that, I hadn't seen that. Well, Clark's bachelor's thesis way back in the day was about his call generating program, his choreography generating program. The main outcome of that was that it's hard to teach a computer about flow, because it tended to spit out some pretty awful sequences. And so that's the last, you're right. There was some other papers that somebody wrote at some point, but I can't remember what they were. And then of course Bill Ackerman worked out some I was about to say fairly simple if you're a mathematician, formulations for the mental image system, explaining why that works. You can find that in an appendix in his booklet on mental image calling, which is free on the web if you go Googling for it. It's a variation of Don's system.
Oh, absolutely.
Those are the two things that come to mind offhand. But I'd be interested about the other papers, and come to think of it, I do recollect that somebody wrote something square dancey in all that time, and there's probably several that I'm unaware of that would be cool.
There is somewhere a video on YouTube about mathematics and square dance, also demonstrated in tech squares. I just forgot who the caller was who did it.
Guy L. Steele.
Oh, Guy. Yeah, sure. That's a likely suspect, and he's a relative newcomer to square dancing, which I forget what that means, but maybe he's only been doing it 20 years or something. Yeah, Guy is another super sharp MIT guy. A whole bunch of people came out of this one laboratory at MIT. I was there, Bill was there, Guy was there, some other people I can't remember were there. And we had a lot of people in that lab who took the course, but we had a number of people who have gone on to be callers.
Mm-hmm.
No shortage of nerds at MIT.
Yeah, 2013 square dancing is a math elective.
Yeah. I have a fond memory one year at Collar Lab at an after party when Elmer Sheffield was the chairman. And Clark Baker was over with a group of UMIT people, and I went over. They had been in this discussion for over half an hour, and I wanted to know what was going on because everybody here already knows how much I love choreography. I go over and I said, what are you trying to do? And he says, okay, here's the problem. We want a box circulate that is a zero. I mean, split circulate. I want split circulate to be a zero. And, oh, yeah? I walked away. Less than 5 minutes later, I walked back and I said, oh, that's easy. You know the solution?
No.
Okay. The same setup that you use for Venus and Mars.
Oh.
It has to be asymmetric. And as it turns out, where you'd make boys right, girls left-hand star from that situation, a split circulate is a zero. One box is a right-handed box, one box is a left-handed box, and it's asymmetric. But I was just luck. I just walked over there and I started talking to Elmer and I said, "Excuse me, I don't know how this happens, but I have a back part of my brain that keeps working no matter what I'm doing. I go watch Hallmark movies and I write choreography at the same time."
Oh, more famous square dance caller nerds that I didn't mention. Obviously, Clark, the same lab, and Stabalski, another guy that. Actually, then I was going to say the name of another guy, but I'm not sure he came out of that lab. But yeah, there were a whole bunch of people. And now Tech Squares, mind you, for most of its history, had a great caller who was the founding caller and called for it for several decades, named Dennis Marsh, and he was not a technical nerd guy at all. His day job was that he was a carpenter and he made custom cabinets and that sort of thing, and a nice guy and an excellent caller, just a great guy. Sometimes he made some technical things that were a little dubious or something, but he had such great energy and such nice choreography. There were one or two things that he did that a lot of people did back in the day that now if somebody calls those things, we wag our finger at them and say, no, you can't do that. And so, I mean, he was a product of his era, and he started as a teen caller, but he was like the least technical guy in the universe that you can imagine, and he was the club caller, and created the environment where all these nerds came together and did all the high level calling and the C4 and everything, and he was just a regular guy, just a very regular guy.
Well, one thing I love about the Tech Squares, if you go and watch the videos that are available, you'll see they do something that's missing from most of square dancing today. Styling.
You mean dancing? Yeah.
Yeah, they dance and they have styling, and they actually dance the full beat.
Oh,
To the
now
beat.
that now the current caller, and he's been there for at this point quite a while. I'm really really bad with dates, so don't ask me exactly when. Um, is a guy named Ted Lazat, who's I think he's originally from New Hampshire. Maybe he still lives there, but anyway, that's the guy. When you see the YouTube videos, I don't think there's any YouTube videos of the old days with Dennis or anything like that. But yeah, the new stuff, that's all Ted. Carrying on traditions and putting his spin on it and doing an excellent job.
Okay, John, what are you thinking? Nothing. Mel, say something.
I was just looking up I was just trying to find a couple of those, the links. I think I got it through the MIT library annex one time. I was just looking to see if I could find any of those, but I can't seem to find them.
There, my other big hobby that I've been doing for 20 something years now is swing dancing. And in fact, at one point I was teaching swing dancing like 5 nights a week, more than I was doing the square dancing. And somebody at MIT, a girl I know, did a thesis on kinesthetics of swing dancing, which is a very physical thing. And the fun thing about that was that she did it by hooking up with some other engineers, and they made a robot that she could swing dance with, and they were trying to figure out how to teach the robot how to do the appropriate things with body weight and what have you.
Oh, how cool that would be.
That's not trivial.
Yeah, it's not. You know who's another caller that you may know from that same lab at MIT? It's Sue Curtis. She's a challenge caller, and she's pretty active these days. She was one of the C4 dancers who, when I was a baby and I was learning how to do right and left through and stuff, she was in that cadre of C4 dancers who danced every week at the club, even though it's just plus and there's no star tips, and they only get, in fact, 3 tips the whole night that are plus, and all the other tips all night long are class level teaching tips. Anyway, she was in the cadre of C4 dancers who dragged me in there and more or less taught me everything I know, or something like that. Lots of nice people back in those days.
Yeah. Well, when we were dancing, Lois and I, at first, we used to belong to a group that was local, that was a private group, invitation only, and we booked in traveling callers from whoever was on the road or could afford to get there. And there was a caller, Earl Johnson, not the Earl Johnson of the East Coast.
Oh.
There was an Earl Johnson from the Southern California area. And I always remember a routine that he called. And I told it to Elmer Sheffield, and he goes to Mississippi and uses it. And all the callers come rushing up at the end of the time and says, "How do you do that?" And the call was this. Okay, you get them in a partner line, do a right and left through, and the ladies lead, ladies chain, send them back Dixie style, make a 2-hand Alaman var, back up halfway, slip the clutch and Alaman left. And to this day, it's a great, I bring it out once in a while for all my clubs to do. And then the second way is to get into a corner line. You do the right and left through Dixie style. Do it. Is that right? Or ladies chain, send them back Dixie style. You got to be with the corner then. Back that dar halfway, shoot the star to a right and left grand. And dancers really like doing that. and it's not hard. It's not hard to teach. You might say ladies lead Dixie style, boys change to a forearm grip. You've got a two-hand thar. Boys back up, go halfway, boom. But it's a fun call. Sorry.
Now, what's this nonsense I hear about people want to get rid of thars?
It was one of the things, it was come out, that was one of the comments when I wrote that piece I wrote in the whole log on let's start actually using the programs and reading what's in there. There was about 25 or 30, well, we should get rid of Alaman Dar and Wrong Way Dar and Boxnet because nobody calls them, nobody uses them, they're hard for the dancers. And I'm going, you're making this, oh, well, let's get rid of star through because dancers can't raise their hands over their heads. Well, for that reason, let's get rid of dive through. I'm going, are we trying to create a program here, or are we trying to create an activity for people that are 70 and 80 years old to die with and let it die with them?
Well, there are a lot of people who, looking at the square dancing activity, make a deliberate and they'll explain it to you straight up decision or idea that square dancing is an activity for old people, and they're only going to be doing it for a limited period of time before they're too old to actually do it at all. And yeah, and or those other you can be unable to do square dancing before you die.
Who started that? Callers.
Well, yeah, well, and I mean, I've heard this talked about at Collar Lab, where they're like, oh no, that's where we need to focus all the efforts. That's where the marketing needs to be. That's what the program should be designed for, because the world we live in, those are the only dancers we're going to get.
Yeah, and the problem that we have in that is we have marketed to our clubs and to our friends without trying to bring in new dancers because we want to hold on, and everybody was so close to the chest. I would love to see, and I had this discussion with Clark and a couple others, we looked at the number of callers that are in Europe right now, and that's right across Europe, Eurasia basically, and we looked at the number of callers in the US. And if every caller in Eurasia joined Collar Lab, there would be more international callers than there would be American callers. Now, why is this focused like? Now, if we looked at the dancers, the average age of dancers in Europe is still, it's gone up because there haven't been that much recruiting as there used to be, but it's still in the 40s. And you've got a good balance of, 20% less, 20% more, and then you've got the mix on the real far spectrum of the scale. Whereas if you look at the US, you've got 10% under 40. You've got that 40 to 60 age, which is a bulk of your new dancers for the short-term live activity that are going to get rushed up. And then you've got this gap, and then you've got 65 to 80. And it is absolutely ridiculous. And that small cadre is dictating this is what dancing should be. Oh, it's too hard to do a twirl. It's too hard to do this. It's too hard to raise your arm. And yet I think back and I was in a square in Germany. There were 7 of us in the square that had casts on, including myself with a cast on my leg. We managed. We have a dancer in Ottawa that only has one arm. He managed.
I call for some seniors, and I have plenty of sympathy for
styling. We used to teach how to adapt.
I put it differently. Sorry, Bob. I put it differently. I have friends who dance in a wheelchair. Well, I would like to limit walk and dodge, and I would like to limit run. I would like to limit split too, because a wheelchair cannot roll sideways.
Right.
Bob, you're on.
Go ahead. Back to the thars. I got one that I love to do. And to give you an idea of the actual setup, but I will call it from a thar with the girls in the middle and the boys on the outside, and I time it till they're in this position. Everybody circle right 1/4, boy fold, touch a quarter, all the girls trade. So basically you can create that with a thar. And I get the boys to that point, I say, stop it, everybody do your part, ping pong circulate. You're
That is
home.
nasty.
You have to wait. You have to wait for Don's next session first to fight over
That is
ping pong
just
circulate.
nasty.
Oh, I do those. In fact,
I got to put the camera down, but I can still hear you.
Yeah, one of the things that I did at the
or
NECA,
from a regular box, do a right and left through,
Oh, sorry,
pass
go
to
ahead,
the
Bob.
center, centers pass the ocean, centers ping pong circulate. But Reinhold wanted to do it where you're doing, one couple is doing one call, couple's doing the other. So I get you in a corner box, do a right and left through, pass through. Centers pass the ocean, centers ping pong circulate while the outside's partner trade and you're home. And it's a nice get out. It's a surprise get out for a lot of people if it's not overused. You get these kind of get outs and they're fun. But my dancers had no problem with it. You know, at first he said, why not? And I said, or no. My favorite thing is just as usual. A lot of callers will come up and say, you can't do that. Deuce Williams did this to won me one time. When I said do a 3/4 tag zig. And Deuce Williams said, you can't do that. And I looked him squarely in the eye because we were having dinner at Bob's Big Boy in Concord. And I looked him back and I said, why not? He looked back at me and he said, damn, you can. And it's just being open. Not everybody can do stuff like this.
Well,
You have to
remember the
understand
argument
it.
when I started doing plus, I remember the argument about crossfire from inverted lines.
Yeah, there you go.
You can't do that. Well, why not? And I've seen this argument. You can't do recycle from a left-hand wave with the boys on the outside. Why not?
You know what the answer should be?
And where it really came before, and I mentioned this earlier, was I was calling in New England, and I called Alaman left turn partner right to a wrong wave R. You can't do that. We don't do that here. No, you don't do it here, but the rest of the world does. That doesn't make it wrong, and that's why I lost. I said that's no reason to drop perfectly good movements and perfectly good things off a list and rewrite the list to make it easier for you as a caller. Our job is to make it easier, more successful, and more entertaining. It's not for ourselves.
My answer is you can't do it, but I can.
Yeah. Anyway,
Chris,
sorry, go ahead. Now, I was going to say this has been a fascinating discussion off a whole bunch of different tangents. Each one of these could be its subject. I have been asked, about doing a couple of Zoom sessions for A2 challenge callers, to discuss some of these things that have been coming up in these sessions. I do not call challenge. I don't dance challenge. I don't even dance A2 for that matter. But if there is interest in this, and I'll throw this out to you, Bob and Chris, and those of you that call that, if you wanted to do this sometime, I've got no problem acting as a host for it. If you're interested, I can talk to Mark, or if you wanted to set one of your own up. I haven't done it on the class thing because it's catered to new journeyman and experienced callers, and we try to keep it at the mainstream and below level where we can. But if you want to do a lot of this talking about challenge, I'm more than willing to host it or set it up for you. I would have to be sitting as a listening participant because half the time I don't even know what the hell you guys are talking about.
Sure. I don't know if this is the right place. I'm always willing to contribute, but what would the topic be?
I like I said, I have no idea. Whatever you guys wanted to go to, if you had a challenge forum or a challenge format or things that you wanted to look at, you could have a thing on singing calls in challenge.
There is a challenge callers Zoom group that meets regularly.
Doesn't Chris Jensen doing something along that line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so let them do it. Let them do it.
No, like I said, I was just throwing that out because I noticed in the last several sessions the discussion veers away from basic mainstream choreographic sequencer techniques into challenge concepts and things along that line.
Yeah. Like Don using step and fold at the basic level.
All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, my wife has gone to a wedding display seminar festival, whatever the heck it is, at a big wedding show in Wagga because our daughter's getting married in March. And she's left me a couple of shopping lists and things that I'm actually physically able to do. So I better have that done by the time she gets home. So if nobody's got anything else, I want to thank everybody for coming in. If you do want to stay here and talk, just let me know. I can just leave it open. But if not, I've got to get running.
Be sure to contact Barry for me.
I will do. And as I said, next week we're going to have Reinhold up here. Have a look at that. If you don't have Colorama, just go to that link. I'll send that out in the email as well and on Facebook. Just upload that onto your computer.
Okay.
Have a look at Colorama because he can play with all of that and it'll help greatly in going through his presentation.
One thing about his presentation is it might go over a bit, and I hope we can allow him to do that. I've been working with him and he's trying to shorten things up. You know, the first presentation to me took 3 hours. So he's got to get that down to 1 hour.
It is an introduction and an overview of Colorama. What I'm hoping that will happen is, and Reinhold seemed to be amiable to this, is here's the program, here's how it works, here's what you can do with it. And then, great, we might set up a couple of sessions here in sequence, or we might set up special sessions on a specific time to deal with Colorama.
Sure.
There's also a Colorama Facebook page. There's Colorama working groups, things like that already. So there's lots of interest in the program, but there's a lot of people that don't understand the program. They see what Mark puts up there with the 3D dancers going back and forth. In fact, I can do that right now.
Well, and this could apply to even challenged callers and dancers. Because they could learn to program their own calls in there. It only goes up through A2. But if you teach a class, how wonderful is it that you can teach a call and your dancer can go home and watch it danced on screen?
Yeah.
And have a view that goes from straight overhead, and you can rotate that to a 20 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree look, or looking straight on at them. You know, depending on how high a stage you sit in or call from at your club, you can adjust the dancers so they look like what you're used to seeing. It's incredible. I've known him, God, since the very beginning, but it was just recently that I understood. And he will give this program free to all your beginners.
Yep.
So you can write the sequence, tell your beginners if you want to study, you can go home and look at it. Yeah. And that's not going to help everybody, but it's going to help a lot of people.
My only negative about Colorama is I can't type things out in longhand. And that's just me. I have to learn to use the program. But when you look at something like this, just watch. Have you got my screen up there?
Yes.
Head square through. Swing through. Girls circulate. Boys trade.
Boys run.
Boys run. Bend the line. Right and left through. Dixie style to a wave. Swing through. Chain down the line. Flutter wheel. You know, and from here you can do a pass through, wheel around, or anything else that you want. You know, right and left through. We're in partner lines. Right and left through. Okay, that's not what I wanted.
Oh, you got a partner hinge in there for some reason. I don't think you wanted.
Yeah, I think that was just background noise. The fan kicked on. But when you're quiet in you know, let's just undo that. Let's undo that. Okay. Right and left through. Right and left through. There we go. And you know, there's like any computer program, there's still a few little hiccups here and there, but you can do whatever you want. Touch 1/4, circulate, boys run, Alaman left your corner. Square your step. You know, although I can't type it out, I can talk to the computer, and then if I load the programs, if you want to type, you can also just pick it. You know, if you want, let's have the heads, you know, circle half. Sorry, I've got all. I should have clicked heads, but you know, I can circle halfway. I can, you know, face your partner. You can do.
Yeah,
do
and animations can't circle fractions.
No. So you know, it's a very, very usable, intuitive program, like as is Taminations, as is any of the other types of programs, as are some of these ones that you have to stop and choose and whatnot. And so what I've asked Reinhold to do, and after discussion with Bob, is come in and just introduce what it can do. Here's an overview, and then let's see where we can go from there.
Yeah, well, the problem is he's excited about all the features and he wants to share everything. I hope that if he doesn't quite finish, people will let him go over. You know, just be aware if it might happen. You know, you can announce you're through with your hour. If you want to continue, let everybody stay in.
Well, we've never really been overly concerned about specifics of time. Usually we set about 45 minutes for the presentation. Some of mine have gone an hour. We've had a few. Dawn's went an hour and 10 minutes today. We're not formal. It's interactive. And like I said, sometimes the presentations will go an hour and a half, 2 hours, if they're interactive and the conversation's there. So
yeah,
that's not a biggie. We try and limit it to about an hour because that's people schedule about an hour to an hour and a half. And that's when they come in and do that. But
yeah.
You know.
We tried to do a second trial run through, and his wife interrupted and says, "You got to stop and come to dinner."
Not a worry.
His heart's in the right place. This guy really.
So I will be sending out the email, the invitation, the link to the site to download the updated version, as Reinhold said. On that site, you'll get a 3-month free trial, and that's of the entire program, with all the bells and whistles on it, so that you can have a look at it, you can play with it, you can see what you want. If you don't want that, the difference between the full program and the free program is basically the ability to save your sequences in their entirety. There's a few other little things, but that's really about it.
Yeah, Mel.
Yes.
I downloaded it a couple of weeks ago, and I only get to do 8 movements, and then it stops.
Oh, that's another thing with the free movement, with the free one. I do think it's limited to the number of calls you can use.
Yeah, it'll only keep 8 movements in a sequence. But you can keep going. You can do more. Did you get that link that I posted there?
Yeah, I saw the link. It'll be in the comments.
Okay, I'll just see if I can repost it so you don't have to go finding it.
When I save the program, all the comments are listed.
Oops. Okay. I don't know why I said Friends of Mel, but that's what it chose to label it as. So, but there's 2 links there. There's the program and there's Friends of Mel, and there's also the slideshow in its current form, talking about the features and things that are going to be coming up. So it's, you know, have a look at it. It'll give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about and where to go to from there. So, but like I said, if you're really interested in the usability of these programs and the functionality of these programs, find the one that works best for you. Colorama is a good program, so is Tamination, so are the other ones. Welcome back, Mark. Your ears must have been burning.
No, I fell asleep. It's been a long day.
Yes, it has. All right, so if nobody has anything else, I think we're getting ready to terminate this meeting.
Well, Mark, you're right. It's 2:30 in the morning.
That's about what time I got up. It's
Yeah, well, that's when I started, and it's 12:30 in the afternoon.
I got up at 5:30.
Okay, well, we'll see you all next week.
Hey, Mel.
Bye-bye, all.
Mel.
Yes.
Is Tony Oxidine on?
Tony has sent me a conversation. Yes, he is on the list.
Okay, can I show you something right here real quick?
Sure.
If I can figure out how to get it to play.
Are you trying to squint to make a face like Tony Oxidine?
Ooh. Let me find out where that's coming from here. There. Okay, stop. All right.
Share your screen, my friend.
There we go. I think you seeing a VLC player?
I'm seeing a traffic cone.
Yep, that's VLC. Okay, I'm gonna click play. That's the video. That's the intro thing to advertise. Look okay? Yep. Does the title look okay for him?
It looks excellent.
Yeah.
Singing call adaptation and techniques.
Yeah, just lose the question mark. That was a typo on my behalf.
Okay, I'll lose the question mark. Okay, well, the reason I thought I'd ask is the last one changed on me with Mike.
Yep,
there was a title
it does
change.
Happen. Like I said, when we were booking these in, what we looked at was just general topics. So far, everybody is booked in. The only ones I need to have a confirmation are Kip Garvey on the 11th of April, which I don't think is going to be a problem. And I'm still waiting for confirmation from the Color Lab board to come and talk to us about Color Lab.
Okay.
But everything else I've got Betsy on. The 21st of March is the only one I don't have a session on. And that is because that's the weekend of my daughter's wedding. You know, I tried to talk Helen into saying, well, I got to do this on Zoom, so we got to be back on Sunday morning so I can do this, but she sort of put the nix on that. I don't understand why. And Mark, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
You have the full Zoom package, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If I end up going into surgery,
yes, I can host.
To do that, are you able to act as complete host on these? I can send you the distribution list and everything else.
Yes, I believe so.
Fantastic. I'd give you lots of notifications what is beforehand.
Okay.
Looking at that, we may be able to just remove a ganglia off the knee, and that might give me some use of my left leg again. So it may not be as bad as it was initially. But I thought I would ask you that instead of dumping that on you or just out and out canceling.
No problem.
Much appreciated.
Okay, so you guys are all done, so I can stop recording then?
Yep, we're all done.